I'd like to call to order the May MTA Board Meeting, which is being held jointly with the Metro-North Railroad and Long Island Railroad Committee, New York City Transit Committee, Bridges and Tunnels Committee, Finance Committee, Audit Committee, Diversity Committee, and Capital Program Oversight Committee. This is also the annual meeting for the First Mutual Transportation Assurance Company. FMTAC is the captive insurer of the MTA. We are conducting this meeting remotely via Zoom and conference call. Governor Cuomo's Executive Order 202.1, which has subsequently been extended, suspends the open meetings law requirements, and accordingly, any provisions in the MTA bylaws regarding public attendance at meetings and board members participating and voting by phone are also suspended. Now I'd like to ask our General Counsel, Tom Quigley, to do the official roll call for the record. Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Board members, I'll now do the official roll call in alphabetical order. When I call your name, please indicate verbally your presence, and please make sure your microphone is not on mute. I see that Chairman Foy is in attendance. Commissioner Albert.
Present.
Commissioner Barbas.
Present.
Commissioner Borelli.
Present.
Commissioner Brown.
I'm here.
Commissioner Calisi.
Here.
Commissioner Cortez Vasquez. Commissioner Cortez Vasquez. Commissioner Fleischer.
Present.
Commissioner Glucksman.
Present.
Commissioner Herman.
Present.
Commissioner Jones. Commissioner Lacewell.
Present.
Commissioner Law.
Here.
Commissioner Lynn.
Here.
Commissioner Mack.
Here.
Commissioner Mahaltas.
Morning.
Commissioner Mojica. Commissioner Mojica indicated he will not be attending. Commissioner Samuelson.
I'm here.
Commissioner Schwartz.
Here.
Commissioner Tessitore.
Here.
And last but not least, Commissioner Zuckerman. Commissioner Zuckerman.
I said here.
Thank you.
I'll say it again, here.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Tom. Later in the meeting, agency presidents and staff will submit procurements and actions for a vote. Your presence at this meeting and silence at the time of a vote will be considered an affirmative vote for the record. If you would like to vote no or abstain, please state your name and your vote. We will now move into our virtual comment period. As in the prior month, speakers were able to register on Monday and send in their comments.
Good morning. We have 16 members of the public registered to speak today. The first 30 minutes of public comment will be delivered at the board meeting, and the remainder will be posted online for the public and board members on Wednesday, May 26th. As a reminder, we ask that all public speakers adhere to the MTA's rules of conduct and decorum. I'd also like to remind our public speakers that in the interest of time and fairness to all speakers, we will limit everyone to 2 minutes. Please be aware that there will be a warning beep to remind you that you have 30 seconds to conclude your remarks. Thank you for your patience and understanding throughout the virtual public comment session. The first speaker will be Bradley Brashears, followed by John Machino.
Greetings. I'm Bradley Brashears, Planning Manager for the Permanent Citizens Advisory Committee to the MTA PCAC. I'm giving my remarks on May 24th for the May 26th board meeting, so apologies if we missed breaking news. But I say this to reinforce the importance of allowing speakers on the day of board meetings. I'll also take this opportunity to urge you to reinstate committee meetings where so much valuable information is shared. As our region reopens and the subways finally return to 24/7 service, New Yorkers are on the verge of discovering our next normal. It seems that each week, a new post-pandemic ridership record is reached. The increase is clear underground with standing room only on rush hour trains. We believe a reimagined discounted fare structure on the railroads will help increase numbers there and help both riders and the MTA's bottom line. More on this in our forthcoming Freedom Ticket Phase 2 report. New York thrives on arts and entertainment, and the best way to get there is to #TakeTheTrain. Last week, I was in Astoria to watch Interim Transit President Sarah Feinberg and Chief Customer Officer Sarah Meyer team up with celebrity chefs to call for New Yorkers to take transit to their favorite restaurants. It came on the heels of many restrictions being lifted on dining and entertainment. Perfect timing. Following that up, MTA officials and our dear friend Sandra Bloodworth, Director of MTA Arts and Design, announced the June 4th return of Transit's Music Under New York program after a 14-month hiatus. And for those looking to escape hot times in the city, the Long Island Railroad has announced its summer getaways and Discover Long Island promotions. The good news is unfortunately matched with tragedy, as it is imperative that riders feel safe on transit. With additional New York police officers and MTA police officers being added to the system, we continue to urge data-driven deployment decisions, and that officers have the training and necessary tools, including being paired with outreach and social workers, to be most effective at dealing with some of the most heartbreaking and serious issues. We also want to take this opportunity to congratulate Rob Marino, Transit's Director of Government and Community Relations, on his well-deserved retirement, and thank him for putting up with us over the years. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is John Michno, followed by Renee Reynolds.
All right, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Despite everything being nearly fully reopened, the MTA continues to suspend its normal board operations in the right of all speakers to be heard at the meeting. It's quite obvious a certain somebody loves the power and everybody is intimidated by him. Anyway, I'm here to talk about what happened on the LIRR back on May 6th when all of us on the main line were told we were pretty much worthless. A large fire near the tracks in Westbury had shut down service, and no attempt was made to provide us with anything. Service could have been run east of Hicksville to Ronkonkoma and Port Jefferson that morning, but instead, riders were told they were on their own. No shuttle between Hicksville and Babylon, and no shuttle buses either. Meanwhile, everyone else gets buses except for us. This has caused me much stress and has worsened my mental condition. I have a disability and I'm on a limited income, and I need to live somewhere with reliable transportation. Yet the only areas you seem to provide that are on the South Shore. And most of us know why that is, but are intimidated to do anything about it. And this waste facility where the fire happened isn't the only one along the main line, and new ones are being planned for other areas along the main line, like in Brentwood, posing a hazard not only to our service, but to our communities and our environment as well. And this wasn't the first time a fire happened at the Jamaica Ash facility in Westbury. In conclusion, if this continued discrimination continues, I'll have no choice but to move to the South Shore, which will be a tremendous disruption in my life. But I cannot continue living somewhere where we're treated like this. I need reliable transportation that doesn't leave me stranded. Myself and the team at Passengers United will continue to speak up against this obvious and blatant discrimination against us.
Thank you. The next speaker is Renee Reynolds, followed by Rachel Foss.
Good morning. My name is Renee Reynolds, and I'm the new Executive Director of the Tri-State Transportation Campaign, a nonprofit organization fighting for sustainable mobility in New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. We're glad that the MTA restored 24-hour service to the subway, bringing great relief to third shift workers who rely on transit. As the city continues to reopen its economy, we believe it is critical for the MTA to restart the planning and implementation of the bus network redesign. Some of these bus routes are relics of the streetcar era, and COVID-19 is likely to have altered commuting patterns, which makes it all the more important for the MTA to engage with communities, especially those that are bus dependent, to give bus routes a fresh look. We want to ensure that these bus networks redesigns are substantial and will not only better service existing riders, but attract new bus riders as well. That means that the MTA needs to improve that they're on track with the technical improvements like all door boarding, transit signal priority, identifying new bus routes and priority corridors. But it also means that the MTA needs to ensure that they're creating a network design that will, in and of itself, provide the kind of improvements to routes and frequency that these routes and riders need. Transparency and accountability are important parts of the redesign process, so the MTA needs to report to the board and the public on a regular and comprehensive basis. There needs to be tracking of real metrics for bus service that is in line with the kind of robust tracking that is used with subway improvements. Bus service deserves nothing less. We look forward to seeing the bus network redesign process move forward again, and we expect that the final plans will be substantially changed to improve service. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Rachel Foss.
Good morning. My name is Rachel Foss, and I'm the Senior Research Analyst for reInvent Albany. We advocate for more transparent and accountable New York government, including for authorities like the MTA. reInvent Albany is concerned that the possible creation of a new MTA subsidiary responsible for maintenance of the East Midtown Terminal as part of the East Side Access Project is intended to mask potentially huge operating deficits. In February, the MTA issued an RFP to outsource operation and maintenance of the new terminal located within Grand Central. The responsibilities of the new vendor would go beyond maintenance of the concourses and platforms to also include maintaining tracks, signals, and communication and vent plants. The RFP says the MTA intends to, quote, create a new subsidiary agency that will be responsible for the oversight and contract management of the service provider during the term of the contract, and the contract will be awarded by MTA C&D in the name of this new agency, unquote. The MTA already has a vast bureaucracy, and it is unclear how this new subsidiary will fit into the MTA's existing governance structure. If it's created, who within MTA will actually own responsibility for the new terminal, given that Long Island Railroad, Metro North, and MTA C&D will also retain some roles? At a time when the MTA is seeking to reorganize and centralize its operations, creation of a new subsidiary is completely counter to that goal. It will be also harder to assess labor costs with the use of an outside vendor. Additionally, we are concerned that creation of the new subsidiary would shift substantial maintenance costs off the books of Long Island Railroad and make the MTA's already complex budgeting process even more opaque. The state comptroller in 2019 found the operating deficit for East Side Access to be upwards of about $190 million. And the MTA's November 2020 financial plan shows a budget impact of about $200 million when service begins in 2022. Given these concerns, we ask the MTA staff to provide the MTA Board, public, and legislature with a detailed rationale for creation of a new East Side Access maintenance subsidiary. The MTA Board should not approve the creation of this new subsidiary without detailed financial information about how it will impact the MTA and Long Island Railroad's budget. The MTA Board, legislature, and public should be wary of creation of new subsidiaries given their proliferation in New York State and limited capacity of oversight bodies. There are more than 1,000 public authorities and subsidiaries which have issued 96% of outstanding state-supported debt, and 585 authorities are subject to Authorities Budget Office oversight. The ABO has a staff of only 11 and a budget of $2 million to do the Herculean task of overseeing all of these authorities and subsidiaries. Thank you for your consideration.
Our next speaker is Andrew Pollack, followed by Charlton D'Souza.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm Andy Pollack, the Regional Director of Passengers United. Two things we're going to discuss this month. First, regarding the Long Island Railroad. I'm very pleased to have found out from numerous sources in the media that the Long Beach line is expected to return to full 100% service by the beginning of July. My message to the president of the Long Island Railroad, and I've been saying this now for a year, please reinstate the 2:11 p.m. train from Penn to Long Beach. I need that train because it links me up with the Q30, Q31 bus in Jamaica for me to get home to Fresh Meadows when I come from a nice fun day in Midtown. So that should be on the record as was from the previous year. Also, I'm hoping that weekend half-hourly service will resume on the Babylon line, and hopefully the half-hourly service on the Port Washington line will return sometime later this summer. And the second point regarding safety with New York City Transit. So we have had a previous stance, Passengers United. We are still calling for extra patrols from the New York State Police, because as you know, the NYPD got defunded last year, so there's not enough resources. We want action from Albany, of course, so please, we want extra police in the system from the state police. Maybe even the National Guard can be called in for what we know, but that's all I'm going to say this month. Thank you all very much. Have a good Memorial Day, and I expect to speak to you all again in June.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Charlton D'Souza, followed by Alida Dupree.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Charlton D'Souza, president of Passengers United. And yet again, we had a shooting this weekend on the D line. Then we had a robbery at 169th Street subway station in Queens last night. And I rode the subway system all weekend. I didn't see one police officer. So we're being lied to about the police deployment in the subways. And furthermore, we have a homeless situation. We need 300 to 400 social workers in the subway system getting the crisis under control. This is getting ridiculous. And our organization, hasn't been invited to MTA press conferences. And I would like to know why, because our organization has held several of our own press events and we were on the 11 p.m. news. So we have been speaking and advocating for more police in the subway, which we feel is right. But at the same time, the security guards that the MTA has hired, they only make minimum wage. Many of the security guards that I've seen are playing with their cell phones. Some of them are not even patrolling. They're sitting down on the benches, sleeping, as I observed at the 28th Street Park Avenue station. So we have a crisis. Why don't you guys put the property protection agents who get the cash from the station agent booths? We need property protection agents. I think they would be better. And at this point, I think that the governor should sign an emergency declaration and bring in maybe 200, National Guard troops to help overnight because of the protest happening in the city. The NYPD doesn't have enough manpower at all times, but we need security. And what's happening now with the shooting, since when have we ever had a shooting in the subway system in recent months? I don't remember a shooting. So the subways are getting dangerous. They're not safe. We need security. And, it's not fair to your workers either. Your workers are getting punched and attacked. I believe 2 transit workers were attacked this weekend. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Alita Dupree, followed by Mary Parisian Lavelle.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Pat Foy and members. Alita Dupree for the record. My pronouns are she and her. Always good to be back with you. How about some Grand Central Terminal for you? This is what legendary looks like. I appreciate the work of facilitating vaccinations in our community on subway trains, railroad stations, Pennsylvania Station, and Grand Central Terminal. Can't think of a better place to get vaccinated than Grand Central Terminal. I do it myself, but I've had my vaccine already. What excites me most? ADA work. I want to see more ADA work, 50 stations a year. Why is it exciting? Because it is the gateway to full participation on our system, that more people can enjoy the benefits of new rail cars and signaling and clean stations and Omni. So we got to really keep up with our ADA work. And I think we have to get that Omni fare card and app out as soon as possible. Not everybody has phones, even with free smartphones, and some people don't want to use their phones. I would hope that everyone would feel safe using their phones, but cards are good too. I hope to get one. Paper tickets, they're older than me. I'm an old soldier, showing my age. So we got to move away from MetroCard and encourage people to load their fare products online. When you're at a vending machine, it's an accident waiting to happen. Safety issues involved. And we just got to work on our safety on the subway and using pragmatic solutions. I'm not going to go into all the technical aspects here, but I grew up on this system and I want us all to be able to enjoy this system. It's not just New Yorkers that love their subway, but people from all over the world who love this system that is the subway. I know I just used this title of a ELO song, Jeff Lynne and the Electric Light Orchestra, all over the world. So let's continue the work. And remember that our system is legendary. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mary Parisian Lavelle, followed by CN.
Good morning. My name is Mary Parison Lavelle, Chair of Civics United for Railroad Environmental Solutions. Did you know that the MTA is a partner in the growing waste by rail industry? This industry would not exist without your publicly subsidized assets. Did you know that the MTA can play a significant role in stopping needless health and environmental harms from this new industry? How? The MTA can repower a fleet of waste hauling MP15 locomotives to Tier 4 switcher emission standards. MTA LIRR can do this with the $27 million the New York State Legislature has given you for this purpose since 2013. MTA LIRR can amend its transfer agreement with the New York and Atlantic Railway to require covers on open muffin top loads of waste. This would make derailments on your tracks less likely and end needless emissions of waste blow-off and leachate in our neighborhoods. The recent Tunnel Hill Partners derailment east of Jamaica required a crane from Pennsylvania. You may wonder if Tunnel Hill Partners is too poor to cover its rail cars. Well, Moody's reported that Tunnel Hill Partners in 2018 revenues were $280 million. In 2019, Tunnel Hill Partners was acquired by Macquarie, an Australian investment bank. Then waste giant Will Labreda, Win Waste Innovations, bought it. Yet these profitable private businesses continue to perpetrate irreparable harms on communities, including environmental justice communities. Brentwood, a New York State identified environmental justice community, is the site of Tunnel Hill Partners' latest facility. The New York State, yes, the New York State NAACP issued a press release last week protesting the siting of a new waste by rail facility in Brentwood. It's time for the MTA to act responsibly. You already have the resources and power. You need to do this. Thank you very much and have a great day.
Thank you. Our next speaker is CN, followed by HP Schroer.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Good morning, members of the board. I'd like to speak about the eHealth On Demand program. I'd like to know if we could please have an update. I understand that there's been other issues with the subways lately, but it would be nice to have an update on what the plan is for any rationing of the rides or caps on the amount of money on a ride, and what's going to happen with Curb. Are they going to be participating in the eHealth On Demand program anymore, or are they not? And about the availability of 24-hour service on the eHealth On Demand program. At the moment, Arrow provides 24-hour service, but LimoSys does not. And I'd like to thank the MTA because the new construction on the rail sheds under Park Avenue, that construction is going to include audible pedestrian signals. And I think it's really important that when the MTA is having construction projects, I think it's important to include audible pedestrian signals to help people who are blind or vision impaired to get to stations that are being reconstructed. And I'd just like to quickly talk about crime just for a second. It's been said that since the ridership has decreased during the pandemic, that crime has increased. My theory on that is I think that some of the people who are homeless don't have access to virtual meetings during the pandemic with their doctors or psychiatrists. They didn't have a way of refilling their medications. And I think that could have played a big part into why some people might be having some episodes in the subway system. But let's hope that we're not pushing the problem out into the streets from the subway. And I'd like to thank the transit officers for the great job they are doing at the moment. I've heard really wonderful stories about how just recently they saved someone who was on the tracks. A transit officer was using his flashlight to stop a subway train. So thank you, transit, for doing that. And let's bring back the token booth people too, from the side of the station where they were taken away from a long time ago, if we remember. So subway token people need to be on both sides of the subway station, not just one side. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Our next speaker is H.P. Schroer, followed by Yuki Endo.
Good morning. Sorry, good afternoon. For the record, I'm HP, a World War II veteran and director of UMIWI. For the last 4 years, I've heard the MTA Board on Memorial Day thank veterans for our service and sacrifice by charging us full fare on the MTA. Is that fair? While you recognize the moral obligation, you didn't provide the money in your budget for a veterans discount. We heard you and created in the state legislature, which gives the MTA, the state, and New York City the money for the discount. The president added billions of dollars to your budget, specifically designed for public transportation. You have the money. The question is, do you have the will? Pat, at last month's meeting, I asked you, will you include in your budget a provision for a veterans discount? I'm waiting for the answer. For those on the board representing the mayor, I asked, will you support giving veterans a discount? I'm waiting for an answer. For Larry, Robert, Sarah, and other representing the governor, will you dedicate from every fare the estimated 2 cents that it would take to fund a discount? I'm waiting for an answer. How much longer will veterans have to wait for you to correct this injustice? Use your moral compass to guide you. Show your sincerity by acting with temerity. Prove a veteran's service and sacrifice is worth 2 cents. Announce on Memorial Day the creation of a veterans discount on the MTA. It's the right thing to do. I thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Yuki Endo, followed by Joseph Rappaport.
I understand other anti-challenge avoid preventing non-alienated to provide syllabus for the mainline weekend shutdown because the night buses 20 to 24, 40, 41 do not run 24 hours, do not accept bikes on board the fixed buses. And it does not substitute for the non-alienated shuttle bus. All branches, including Hampton, Protestant, Oyster Bay branch, I get that. But not for the Protestant local commuter between Jenica Hicks. As you know, summer season is the tourist season for Long Island, with all the beaches, adventure, space splash, open up Long Island later. You did need to have a shuttle bus for the mainline commuter because Hart and Ginny are very busy during the summer season. Even so, it is expensive than Long Island later. Not providing mainline commuters shuttle bus, mainline lose ridership, and people going further east will probably spend no money on Hart and Ginny because the mainline commuter are inconvenient to take 3-4 trains. About shuttle local projection, so people will spend no money to use Hart and Ginny since they are no direct. Not many people cannot afford to take taxi, rideshare service, or the Hart and Ginny. So you need to provide shuttle bus for the mainline commuter because Hart and Ginny bus are hard to get on because tonight is high demand. Also, I appreciate a job program, but tonight keeping the mainland community safe from the crazy people hanging around a train station, bus station, to get the long unneeded nice bus taxi drivers safe. With all the kinds happening on the public transportation, and leisure service or police agency should work together to have an undercover officer like the MTA survey buses, night bus, and city bus doing doing day and night. Also, when the also bring the schedule should come back for a long annual return.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Our next speaker is Joseph Rappaport, followed by Jason Anthony.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, board members. My name is Joe Rappaport. I'm the Executive Director of BCID, the Brooklyn Center for Independence of the Disabled, and I'm here today to talk briefly about two issues. One is this public comment period. It is now 14 months into the pandemic, and the MTA's decision to continue to restrict the amount of time public speakers are allowed to speak, only a half an hour at the actual meeting, and to hold only one meeting a month no longer makes sense, if it ever did. When the MTA made its meetings remote, I thought it would be a good thing. No longer would members of the disability community have to get up at 5 a.m. to prepare for a long Access-a-Ride ride into Lower Manhattan for a 9 a.m. meeting. Instead, they could make their comments from the safety of their own home. But it hasn't worked out that way, actually. Remarks must be made 2 days in advance of the meeting, not in real time. And they are often cut off because you only allocate a half an hour for the public to speak. In addition, because you do not have committee meetings any longer, there are fewer chances to speak. I want to emphasize how important the public speaking periods have been to the disability community. On subway access, on Access-a-Ride, I know board members and staff alike have heard and learned from our testimony over the years. Folks, get with the program. It's time to restore committee meetings, make the comment period in real time, and end the time restriction. A hybrid approach may make sense as well. On the Access-a-Ride front, we are very concerned about the elimination of a key vendor in the on-demand program. I understand the reasoning behind it, and I'm not going to comment on that, but we are concerned about the program. Beyond that, as my colleague Ruth Lowenkron wrote the MTA's accessibility advisor on Friday, I quote, "Our recollection is that the revised broker procurement is slated to save the MTA approximately $40 million. Where, you bet, where is this money going? ARG strongly urges the MTA to reinvest any savings back into the paratransit operations and specifically into an expanded on-demand program where without restrictions on the number of rides or the cost per trip." Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jason Anthony, followed by Vanessa.
Good morning, board members. Jason Anthony from the Congress of Essential Workers. This month speaking from the John F. Kennedy on the Staten Island Ferry, where no other group has been, and going towards the borough has been forgotten. This month I'm gonna bring up the issue that 24/7 subway service has been way overdue. That benefits not only essential workers, it benefits everyone. Last weekend, I took the 4 train from Grand Central towards the Bronx. I saw little police presence inside the train, but we need more, especially in the downtown Brooklyn area where transit 30 is. And also we need more social workers from the Broadway Residents Committee that they could lead their facilities at Penn State. And also we need more police presence, not only in the platforms, along the subway route as well. But also please update the subway master inside the Staten Island ferry boats. They are too old, they need to be updated. And please bring articulated buses to Staten Island, especially to the S40, where you have workers in standing room only. So that's all I have to say for this month. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Vanessa, followed by Jessica De La Rosa.
Hello, how you doing? I'm a bus operator working out of Queens. I report to my depot in Queens. I pull out a bus, I bring it out and service the riding public in the Bronx and in Manhattan. We're currently out of contract. We're 3 years behind in salary. Drivers out in Bronx, Manhattan, and other boroughs besides Staten Island are getting more paid than what we get, or than what we're getting at Queens and Staten Island. You guys said that you needed the bill money to pay us. You got the bill money from the government, and you still haven't paid us. Where's our contract? Where's the money that we deserve? We've been driving out here through the pandemic. We've been dying out here, and we still haven't gotten a raise. Where's all the money going? And then you have this whole thing about safety. You're blaming the government. You're blaming the mayor. We blame the transit authority. You guys have nothing implemented for the drivers or nothing implemented for the employees telling us how to deal with EDPs or telling us how to deal with the homeless. We need more training dealing with the homeless and dealing with the EDPs. You need to give us a radio directly contacting the police officers when we need help. We need help. We need a contract. And this whole thing is just pathetic.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jessica De La Rosa, followed by Valerie Joseph.
Hi there, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So good morning, I'm Jessica De La Rosa, and I'm the Systems Advocate for the Brooklyn Center for Independence of the Disabled and a longtime Access-a-Ride user. BCID is a member of ARG, the Access-a-Ride Reform Group. I'm testifying today because I and my colleagues and friends who use Access-a-Ride and who are in the on-demand program now are having a tough time finding rides. Access-a-Ride tells us that there's a shortage of drivers, and we understand that. But what we don't understand is why the drivers who pick us up often make it clear that they aren't getting reimbursed fairly for their rides. And now, with this elimination of Curb as one of the on-demand vendors, we'll be left with two companies to choose from, even though Curb had the widest network of drivers. We understand why Curb will no longer be a vendor, but what we don't want is for the MTA just to shrug the problem off. Access-a-Ride and the MTA must work to broaden the network and make sure no one is left at the curb. Thank you.
Thank you. Our final speaker is Valerie Joseph.
Good afternoon. My name is Valerie Joseph, Access-a-Ride Advocate from the Brooklyn Center for the Independence of the Disabled. I have a few comments about the on-demand pilot program that are very concerning to me and the population that I try to represent. I'm a strong supporter of the on-demand program, which is why I'm particularly concerned with what's going on. Here are my questions. Number one, why when we book a ride, it either takes too long to register the ride or does not register at all? Number two, why are the drivers telling us that we aren't getting paid enough to make the pickups for worth the money that they're getting? Number three, even though riders are given the option to choose between vendors, why has the availability problem not been resolved? What actions will Access-a-Ride and the MTA take to resolve these problems? Let me make sure you know that in spite of the problems that have popped up recently, the on-demand pilot program has been a game changer for me and the other lucky 1,200 people who have had the opportunity to use this program. As the city opens up and we get back to our offices and start going to meetings in person, on demand, if it's working, is the way that it once did, with the way that it once did, will make a huge difference. It should be expanded, but no matter what, you need to take action now to resolve these issues that we are experiencing at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the public comment session.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I just want to go over the attendance of board members who did not respond at the initial call. Commissioner Cortez Vasquez,
Present.
thank you. And Commissioner Mojica, still absent. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you. Thanks for joining us in this month's virtual meeting of the MTA Board. We'll begin today, as we have done far too often over the last year, with a moment of silence to acknowledge members of the MTA family who have passed since our last meeting. We recognize and honor their service and their memory. Sarah.
Thank you, Pat. Sadly, I'll be mentioning 3 colleagues today, and then I'll turn it over to Craig Cipriano, who will mention one. First, Leighton Watson, who was a cleaner at New York City Transit. Leon Flowers, who is a train operator. And Felicia Wright, who is an administrative contract specialist in our procurement department. Our thoughts and prayers are with their families and loved ones. Craig.
Thank you, Sarah. This morning, I'd like to recognize the passing of one of our members of our bus's family, Yvonne Nelson, bus operator, LaGuardia Depot. Our thoughts and prayers are with their families.
Phil.
I'm sad to report 2 members of the Long Island Railroad family passed away in May. On May 6th, we lost Thomas Avalon Sr., known by all as Tommy. After joining the railroad in 1999, Tommy served in many roles with increasing responsibility, and most recently as the Chief Customer Service Clerk at Penn Station. Proud member of TCU, hard-working veteran of stations who always took time to mentor junior employees. He was a leader through his actions, always looking to make our customers feel welcome and comfortable. A gentle soul, lively personality, devoted husband, father, and grandfather and friend. Survived by his wife Susan, his sons Thomas Jr., Christopher, and Joseph. And on May 21, Alan Forbes succumbed to COVID. Alan joined the railroad in 2000 as an electrician in the maintenance equipment department. He was a proud member of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers with over 21 years at the railroad. Working in our Hillside car shop, Alan was relied upon for his computer skills, verifying software, onboard computer systems, and updating troubleshooting microprocessors and electrical components, an essential part of the M7 fleet success, contributing to the reliability and to the benefit of our customers. He will be sorely missed as a friend and co-worker. Alan is survived by his wife, Donna, and their children, Serena and Tatiana. Please join me in keeping Tommy, Alan, and both their families in your thoughts and prayers.
I now ask all of you to please join in a moment of silence for our fallen colleagues. Thank you. It's important that we continue to honor those we've lost over the last year plus as we continue to mourn their passing. This is a solemn reminder that even as the region and the country continue to recover and begin to approach normalcy, the pandemic is still with us, and we will not forget the service and sacrifice of our colleagues. In addition to remembering our colleagues lost to COVID-19, we also commemorated this week New York City Transit train operator Garrett Goebel, who was murdered in a senseless arson attack on his train almost 14 months ago after escorting his passengers to safety. The MTA honored his memory earlier this week at a moving ceremony at his home station of Flatbush Avenue, Brooklyn College, where his mother Vicky, wife Delilah, and their 2 sons unveiled a portrait of Mr. Goebel, alongside MTA colleagues and fellow members of the TWU led by President Tony Utano. I encourage you all to visit the Flatbush Avenue Brooklyn College station to take a look at the stunning memorial and pay your respects to Mr. Goebel. Thanks to Sarah Feinberg and her team for supporting the Goebel family over the last year and for this beautiful tribute. 24/7 service, take the train. We have come such a long way since the pandemic began in March 2020. And there's no better indicator of the region's continued recovery than our return to 24/7 subway service. We are thrilled to once again welcome back overnight all New Yorkers to the system in the late night hours. So far, the reopening has been absolutely seamless. I want to thank Sarah Feinberg and Demetrius Critchlow and their teams for the leadership of the subway team and all our agency presidents for all they do to make sure all of our service is safe and reliable. New York City is a city that never sleeps, and it needs a strong transit system to match if we're going to really recover economically from this crisis. A week ago Monday, leaders of the New York Stock Exchange invited several of our dedicated essential workers and members of the senior leadership team to ring the opening bell in celebration of the return to 24/7 service. It was an honor to mark this important milestone at the New York Stock Exchange. It not only reflects the MTA's importance to the regional economy, but also rightly recognizes all that our heroic frontline workers have been doing to pull New York through this crisis. That critical work continues at this important moment, a week after Governor Cuomo gave the state the green light to reopen in earnest. People are heading back into offices and back to restaurants, bars, entertainment, and everything else that makes this city so great. But we can't reopen strong unless customers return to the MTA. That's why we've launched an exciting new Take the Train and Take the Bus campaign, led creatively and ably by Abby Collins and Sarah Meyer. I'm holding up a Take the Train shirt. It is cool and handsome. It's available in Take the Bus versions and Welcome Back New York, and you can get it online at the New York Transit Museum. We're making a major advertising push with digital messaging all over our stations and ads on buses and billboards. Our aim is to let New Yorkers know that they'll be returning to a more reliable and cleaner system than the one many last used before the pandemic, and that, frankly, we are clearly still the best way to get around town. We're also selling limited edition merchandise like the t-shirt, and there's more to come on the radio and in the digital sphere as well. We're incredibly proud of the ridership gains we're already starting to see at every one of our agencies. While our ridership and revenue still has a long way to go before it reaches pre-pandemic levels, we're hitting important new ridership milestones every few days. Last Friday, we hit a post-pandemic high of more than 2.3 million trips on the subways, while buses continue to serve more than 1.2 million customers daily. The Long Island Railroad also carried a pandemic record 106,000 people last week, with Metro-North ridership hovering around 80,000 and growing. This is great news, and I'm confident these encouraging numbers will only keep growing in the weeks, months, and years ahead. A significant and important part of the puzzle for a robust opening is safety. To keep our momentum going, we need to make sure that customers are returning to a safe system, one that is safe from both COVID-19 and from crime and harassment. And customers need to feel safe too. This has always been our highest priority. Let's talk about COVID-19 for a second. Earlier this month, we took our COVID response to the next level by launching a public vaccination pilot program. As the governor and public health experts have said, when the number of vaccinations goes up, cases and hospitalization rates go down. To date, more than 11,000 people, customers, average New Yorkers, and our employees have taken advantage of our convenient pop-up vaccine sites and stations across the system. We've made it a point to meet riders where they are, just as we did with our vaccine program for employees, to make getting the vaccine easier than ever. Plus, we sweetened the deal with free transportation passes. Kudos to all of the stellar MTA employees and the state for its partnership who helped make this pilot such a massive success. I should also note that our employee vaccination program continues, and more than 31,000 of our heroic employees have received at least their first dose, including those employees vaccinated at drugstores and doctors' offices and the like. Approximately 60% of our employees have received their first dose. We want to see these numbers even higher and strongly urge everyone to get the vaccine when they can. Today, we are launching a mobile vaccination van for employees that will go to operating work sites to make vaccination even easier for our employees. The mobile vaccination van will start at the Jackie Gleason Bus Depot in 38th Street Yard today. Now on to our second point of safety, freedom from crime and harassment. I want to preface this by saying that our system is safe overall. Crime is down significantly from 5 or even 10 or 15 years ago, but today's customers ride in today's system. We have seen some categories of crime and Pat Warren and Sarah will be discussing this later, rise dramatically despite low ridership during the pandemic. And there have been too many disturbing incidents recently, including several disgusting attacks on employees, that we simply cannot tolerate. As Sarah and I have been saying for months now, our system can and should be even safer. To make that happen, we need resources from the city and at a level that matches the need, and clarity on resources already deployed to transit. Additional uniformed officers and social workers will address what 75% of our customers and 100% of our employees tell us is their biggest concern, and more effectively address the twin homeless and mental health crises that are playing out in our system every day. City Hall has already announced that they would be providing more uniformed officers in the system. While we thank them for that effort, the fact is we need them to do more. It's not politics. This is reality for our customers and employees. The next few weeks and months are crucial to accelerating New York's recovery from the pandemic and bringing people back to mass transit. Our most recent survey of about 33,000 riders showed that 75% view crime and harassment as their #1 issue pertaining to the system. In addition, the most recent Emerson poll of New Yorkers reported that 79% of those surveyed reported that they were very or somewhat concerned about crime on the subways. We need the city to come to the table as real partners for the good of New York. And again, we're appreciative of the additional resources that have been provided, but in this critical time, we need more. As I've said repeatedly, I'm bullish on our recovery, city, state, region, MTA. And I know we can come out of this crisis stronger and better than ever if customers, including returning tourists, and our employees feel safe in the city, including on mass transit. A word about electric buses. Not only are we safe, reliable, and efficient, but traveling on MTA rail and buses helps avoid 17 million metric tons of greenhouse gases annually. To increase that huge environmental benefit from taking mass transit, our capital plan includes the largest electric bus order in U.S. history. At Governor Cuomo's urging, we have upgraded our pending electric bus order from 45 to 60, a 33% increase over what had been planned. To give you some perspective, this is 4 times the size of our last zero-emission bus purchase. It shows we're serious about our promise to deliver an all-electric fleet by 2040. And Craig Cipriano and his team and our customers can't wait to see these buses hit the road late next year. Their impact will be far-reaching, helping not only to further reduce emissions, but also address social equity and climate change issues. With that, I'll turn it over to Pat Warren, who I note is a West Point graduate and U.S. Army veteran, as is Commissioner Zuckerman, and undoubtedly others on this call. We thank all veterans for their service to our nation on this Memorial Day weekend. Pat.
Thank you, Chairman. As is always the case, the safety and security of our employees and customers remains paramount. Regarding COVID-19, the number of new cases in New York City and within MTA continues to drop. On average, we currently see less than 3 new cases per day across the MTA, which matches our lowest rates from last fall. Pursuing the vaccination of our workforce continues as our major safety effort. And as you just heard from the chairman, we have over 31,000 of our 70,000 person workforce vaccinated through one of our vaccination sites or sponsored programs. And this equates to about 45% of our workforce that we have this direct knowledge of. Further surveys of our workforce indicate that between another 15 to 16% of our workforce have taken the vaccination through either the pharmacy, their own healthcare provider, or through other state and county facilities, which indicates that 60% of our workforce is now vaccinated. These percentages are in line with our city and state statistics for vaccinations. We continue to pursue every avenue to encourage our employees to get vaccinated. To this end, as was mentioned, our folks are taking part in the public pop-up vaccination sites, which continue at Penn and GCT as we speak. You just heard that we are starting our own mobile service now, and it's at its first location, Jackie Gleason Depot, and we will move it to multiple locations as in order to try to get to those folks, providing a convenient and simple method to get the vaccination. We're offering the Johnson & Johnson vaccination with that program. To further encourage our workforce, as was mentioned, there's a lot of incentives out there, 4 hours of leave and other programs that are from the state and other city and county programs, so that there's quite a bit of incentive for our workforce to try to get the vaccine. We encourage everyone to pursue the vaccination. As you're aware, national guidance from the CDC as well as state guidance regarding mask wearing is changing rapidly. In short, the requirement for wearing masks has been lifted when outside and at some public venues. That said, wearing of masks in transportation systems remains a requirement. We've been closely monitoring mask usage in our system and continue to observe the mask usage rates remain in the high 90% range on our buses, subways, and trains. And we continue to thank our ridership for their support and respect shown to one another. As is our standard, we continue the many protocols previously established to protect our employees and customers, which include masks and other PPE. Further, we continue our daily cleaning and disinfecting of stations, trains, buses, paratransit vehicles, and employee work sites, as well as continue our use of advanced air filtration enhancements in our facilities, trains, and buses. Now let me transition to the topic of security. We recognize that to support the recovery in New York City, it's imperative to provide a healthy, safe, and secure environment for our employees and customers. As you're aware, just over a week ago, we returned to 24/7 service in the subway system. So far, safety and security efforts by police, security, and transit employees have delivered full night service with no measurable degradation in cleanliness or security conditions. This is a promising start, but we are aware there's always a risk of backslide, particularly if we lose support from the police or social outreach services from the city. Also of note, this last week, New York City released its HOPE estimate regarding the number of individuals experiencing homelessness across the city and within the subway system. Given the subway system was closed during late night this last winter, the city modified their method of counting to include conducting the count over a 4-day period rather than on a single night. Their estimates indicate that the number of homeless sheltering in the subway system dropped from 1,670 the previous year to 1,280 this year. Similarly, the total estimate for homeless across New York City dropped from 3,857 to 2,376. These are promising estimates that indicate that the introduction of new alternate shelters such as rooms in hotels and increased outreach meaningfully contribute to the reduction of individuals sheltering in the street and within the transportation system. We applaud the city's recent efforts and encourage them to continue to increase their homeless services efforts to support this positive trend. We are all further aware of the need for social services reaches beyond the homeless to the emotionally disturbed and those suffering from substance abuse. Increases in assaults and other inappropriate, unsafe, and unhealthy activities by individuals suffering from these afflictions within the MTA transportation system are a significant concern and contribute to a perception of insecurity. Here again, there's a tremendous need for more health and social service support in our transportation system, and we continue to ask the city to address this need with increased support. In a moment, both MTA Police Chief McGran and NYPD Transit Bureau Chief O'Reilly will provide a review of the major index crimes that challenge security in our system. As significant as the level of major index crimes are to the public sense of security in the subways, buses, and rail systems, are also the quality of life challenges such as vandalism. It is far more likely that our customers will be confronted by these quality of life violations, and it is these experiences that often drive their personal perceptions of insecurity and may ultimately drive them away from the system. To address these challenges, MTA is installing more CCTV cameras, increasing the size of the MTA police force and surging more officers into the subway system, doubling the number of security guards that provide presence, eyes, ears, and general security support to employees and customers, asking for more NYPD police presence in the subway and bus system, advocating for more city-supported social services for those suffering from mental health and substance abuse issues, and continuing aggressive cleaning of cars, buses, and stations. These efforts are important, and we recognize we need to continue to do more to protect our employees and riders and encourage customers back to the MTA and support New York City's recovery. We are grateful for the patronage of our customers and heroic efforts of our employees who are committed to continuing to bring the safest ground transportation to New York. Now let me introduce Acting Chief of Police for the MTA, Joe McGran, and he will be followed by NYPD's Transit Bureau Chief, Catherine O'Reilly.
Good morning. Overall crime on the commuter rails is down year-to-date 5%, but that translates into just 2 crimes, 40 this year versus 42 last year. However, for the month of April, we're also up a total of 6 crimes, and once again the numbers are small, 12 versus 6. The Long Island Railroad is down 2 crimes year-to-date, while Metro North Railroad is up 1 crime. Felony assaults and burglaries are our 2 leading crimes. There are 11 felony assaults system-wide in the first 4 months of this year. 2 of them were against conductors. 5 of them were against police officers affecting arrests, and the rest were between civilian passengers in the service. I also had 11 reported burglaries in the first 4 months. 2 of them from Connex boxes that were not secured, and out of the 11 reported burglaries, we've also made 6 arrests. A number of the other reported burglaries were from stores throughout the system. In this case, it's where certain individuals were banned for shoplifting from different locations, particularly at Grand Central, but when they return and they continue to shoplift, they now get charged with the more serious crime of burglary. Not part of the 7 major crimes category are graffiti and vandalism. As Mr. Warren said, these crimes lead to the sense of not being safe within the system. It leads to a sense of disorder throughout the system. We had 53 incidents of graffiti, and although it is down, it is still a concern considering the amount of time and effort it takes to clean it up. 4 of these incidents of graffiti were considered hate crimes due to the nature of the graffiti that was written. The same is with vandalism, which is also down, but still a major concern. Vandalism occurs when individuals damage the screens throughout our system, but also the scratchiti that they commit on some of our trains. We continue to collaborate with our partners in local law enforcement throughout the system as we prepare for summertime activities in what we consider the new normal. It is hoped that these Belmont Stakes, baseball games, trips to the beach, and trips up north to the mountain will provide a sense of normalcy to our customers after such a challenging year. The department is committed to provide a safe and secure environment, but equally important, a sense of safety to the customers that we serve. Thank you.
Chief O'Reilly.
Good morning, everyone. First and foremost, I'd like to thank all our veterans for their service. And to the gentleman from the U.S. Navy that spoke earlier, personally, from the men and women in New York City Transit, we really appreciate your service, sir. So during the month of April, total major felonies in the subway were down 10.5%, with 13 fewer incidents than during April of last year. For the month, robberies were down 40.9%, with 18 fewer incidents. Grand larcenies were even, and felony assaults were up, with 15 additional incidents for the month of April. Year to date, there were 132 fewer robberies and 275 fewer grand larcenies. There were 24 additional felony assaults this year versus last year. Overall crime, therefore, remains down year to date, with 392 fewer incidents reported, a decrease of 46.8%. The MTA asked for additional police presence, and we answered your call. Last Wednesday, we deployed an additional 250 officers to patrol the PM and AM rush hours. We also asked the MTA to install additional video, and you answered our call, and we thank you for it. We're working together feverishly toward a safe subway system, but we need some help. We're calling on all our partners to help us with the root causes of crime inside and outside of the subway, like homelessness and mental health issues. For example, more than 70% of offenders who commit unprovoked assaults in our subways have a history of mental illness. We also know that most chronic offenders don't pay the fare. I can provide 3 examples right here. A slashing suspect on 14th Street in Union Square on May 18th. A forcible touching in 42nd Street, Times Square on May 20th. And a suspect pushed to the tracks at 21st Street, Queensbridge Station on May 24th. Many of the crimes in transit are committed by recidivist offenders. This is not a new problem, but increasingly, we're seeing individuals reoffend both inside and outside of the subway, often just days apart. I'll give you one example. On May 24th, in the 4-4 precinct, a petty larceny was conducted by a perpetrator. He was again arrested on March 18th in the 3-2 precinct, where he committed a robbery with a box cutter. He was arrested again on April 11th in the 25th precinct, where he pushed a 63-year-old woman to the ground and took her purse. He was arrested again on May 16th in the 3-2 precinct, topside. Perps kicked and damaged a Kentucky Fried Chicken window. And he was issued a DAT for that crime. On May 23rd, the same individual, in front of 2 officers on a platform, pushed a male white, 54 years of age, to the subway platform. And once again, he was arrested. There needs to be real consequences for repeat offenders. We have to keep in mind, and we're grateful for the resources that Commissioner Shea has put into transit. We have to keep in mind that less than 2% of crime across New York City occurs in the subway. Addressing these policy matters can greatly improve subway safety. That concludes my crime update, and I thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions I'll start with Commissioner Mihaltis.
So, Chief, thank you. So, can you say that felony assaults are up, but crime is down? Can you just walk us through, because there's a disconnect here, right? We know crime is up in the subways, but you're telling us crime is down. So if you could just walk us through those numbers, please, just tease them out so we can better understand.
Absolutely, I can walk you through it. So felony assaults are up. That's what we're saying. We're saying,
right.
No, the month. For the month of April, we had one murder versus 1. We had 0 rapes versus 0 for the same period last year. Robberies were 26 versus 44, down 18. Grand larcenies were 47 versus 47, even. Felony assaults were 37 versus 22. That's your increase of 15. And burglaries were 0 versus 10 for last year. So overall, 7 major crime is down in the subway.
Right, because you have 2 million people as opposed to 6 million people on the train. Okay, so that's one question. Second, do you share with Chief McGowan, do you share deployment information with him, at least so we can figure out where we're putting these police officers? You say we want to work together to figure out how we can better use our resources?
I know where to deploy my officers. I do share with Chief McGran on a regular basis. We talk and I ask where he's deployed so we don't duplicate our efforts.
You do? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Commissioner Mack.
Yeah, well, number one, Chief O'Reilly, thank you for your efforts. And Chief McGran, thank you also for your efforts to stem this crime in general. I've heard the concerns come about safety, security at meeting after meeting. These past months, it is crucial that our customers feel comfortable returning to public transportation and that they feel safe on our trains, our stations, in order for New York and the region to recover economically. Very important. Concerns about safety in our system only impact people living in New York City, but also those who commute daily from Long Island. As such, I support the MTA's continued partnership and work with New York City. Again, thank you both chiefs. The city needs to increase the number of police officers and social workers to help put riders at ease, especially at crucial transit hubs. Example, Penn Station, Jamaica Station, and Atlantic Terminal. These hubs are important. The reality is safety and security remains a vital issue and will continue to impact riders' decision to return to the system fully. Not only the subways, buses, but Long Island Railroad as well. for the good of the region. We need the city to step in and add more officers. The uniform has always been a deterrent to crime.
Thank you, Commissioner. Sarah.
Thanks, Pat. I just wanted to say a couple things. First, Chief O'Reilly, on the recidivist issue, we could not agree with you more. You're preaching to the choir, certainly, for those at MTA. And just to update you on one thing, last year, the governor and the MTA went to the legislature and asked for legislation that would seek to ban some certain types of recidivist criminals from the system for some period of time and for some activities. So, for example, it wouldn't end up, banning people who are trying to go to work or, I believe, religious services, but would sort of ban them from exactly the kind of behavior you're talking about and what we're so concerned about, which is, really using the system as a tool to assist them in perpetrating crimes. And so since that legislation passed, we have been working really aggressively to make sure that DAs are aware of the legislation, to make sure the judges are aware of the legislation. They, to their credit, they are aware. When we spoke with judges about it, they had actually already done a training on how to use the new law in their own course of business in their courtrooms. And so we're grateful for that. But to your point, I think just yesterday, your men and women arrested someone for a stabbing, and he had 96 priors, including 37 prior felony arrests. And so that's just an example of the kind of situation that your men and women are dealing with every day and that we're dealing with every day. And I will tell you that some of the feedback from the DAs specifically has been that they are not inclined to look at any of that and to take any kind of action to ban people from the system, even though this legislation was specifically very narrow and is aimed literally at folks who are using the transit system in order to perpetrate crime. So we're continuing. We were obviously very disappointed by that, but we're continuing these conversations. And if you would like to join us or partner with us as we're having these conversations and meetings, I would certainly welcome that, because obviously you all have a very important perspective here. And it's incredibly frustrating that we've been trying to act on this for so long and haven't been able to be successful.
Thank you, Sarah. Anybody else? Commissioner Lynn. I'm sorry, Sarah.
That's okay. Second, I just wanted to make sure that I just addressed the other comment about sharing deployment information. Unless I'm mistaken, I know that we share deployment information and specifics with the NYPD. I do not think that you all share deployment information with us, and I just wanted to clarify that. I know that you and Chief McGran have a good relationship, a good working relationship, and have many meetings and conversations, but I don't think that we've ever been able to get any kind of deployment information or strategy from you all. And I know you have your reasons for that. It puts us in a very difficult position because, of course, you have this important responsibility to protect our system, and we have this important responsibility to run the system and to ensure that it's safe and secure. And it's hard to do that when we don't have much information, but I just wanted to clarify that. Is that correct?
So Sarah, we're happy to revisit that. We deploy thousands of officers into the subway each and every day. We increased our deployment. We don't regularly release that information where they are actually posted, but we can talk offline and we can discuss that in a closed door meeting.
That would be very welcome. Thank you so much. That would be great.
Thank you, Chief.
Commissioner Lynn. Commissioner
So
Laiswell.
let me make several comments. And many of these comments perhaps would have been better in committee discussions with the public there to have that conversation. But that doesn't seem, since we're not having them, I think I need to make them now. I'm pleased hearing the concept of partnership and collaboration that was mentioned. The trouble I have is sort of away from this discussion. The numbers that are put out are often skewed, perhaps one-sided, but let me try and set the record straight in a number of areas. Because in the board book, for instance, you talk about the hiring of the MTA police, and you mention all of the hiring that has been done in 19, 20, and 21. You left out in that conversation the fact that there were a lot of retirements and employees leaving. According to numbers I received from the MTA, including the 500 additional officers that we approved in 19, there are 1,442 budgeted officers and only 1,020 actual. So there are 422 public safety officers in MTA police that are not there, that have been approved. I understand it's hard to hire, but if we're talking about a collaborative effort, bringing up to speed immediately, as quickly as possible, but retroactively, obviously that's impossible, but we should have been doing it all along. And if we're 422 officers down, then we are not contributing our piece of the puzzle of how we solve the crime issue. There's also been a lot of conversation about the agreement, and I've heard Sarah say that the MTA agreement was sort of has no teeth in it, and was a sketchy document, and talks about 4,300 officers back in '95, and why aren't we doing the same now? And I think it is well worth, and obviously not impossible today for everyone to read, but it's a 39-page document was agreed to. That took months to negotiate and was signed by Peter Stengel, who was chairman of the Transit Authority Police and the MTA at the time, Rudy Giuliani, mayor, the MTA general counsel, the corporation counsel. And I've heard Sarah quoted as saying in the whereas provision, it says, whereas the parties to this MOU are committed to maintain the level of policing currently provided. And there are no numbers there. The most fascinating part of the document is not on page 2, but is on page 9, where the Transit Bureau is supposed to have a minimum annual average daily operational strength of 1,023 officers. And there's a side letter between the city and the MTA that talk about what minimal operational strength should look like. So the conversation about 4,300 officers, that's why there was a merger, because it was so inefficient. And very few boots were on the ground during that. And that what immediately happened right after the merger was Giuliani dropped the numbers from 4,300 to 2,900. And when he left, it was closer to 2,700. And Bloomberg had 2,500 when he left. And so the reality is that the numbers agreed to by the MTA and the city, when crime was much, much higher than it is now, were around 1,000 officers a day. What's the city now providing? Well, thanks to the additions that the city has made and the mayor agreed to, we've provided 3,250 officers in the current surge. And the actual operational strength, as defined by the parties, is over twice what was agreed to in the settlement. So far from the agreement, the MTA agreement, so far from producing less, the city is putting out substantially more than the MTA agreed to. And as a matter of fact, there's a very interesting.
No, that's just not accurate. It's just not.
Maybe you can tell us how many.
I agree with that. Bob, I agree with it. I was on the MTA, I was vice chairman, and I don't concur with what you're saying.
The MTA, there's an
Maybe
interesting
you should
time.
tell us
Hold
how
on a
many
second, hold on a second.
We've all signed the MOU. I've got it. I have it right in front of me too, and perhaps Chief O'Reilly can weigh in. I don't think anyone thinks that the number of officers that were in the system in 1995 was 1,023.
Right. Take a look at page 9.
I've seen it.
The
I have
agreement.
The agreement.
Hold on, but let me can I finish? I didn't interrupt anyone. Please let me finish.
It's just not accurate. It's not what you're saying.
If you look, there is a contemporaneous Times article in April '95 that discussed that while the city and Giuliani wanted to have 1,000 people out there, the MTA wanted 1,200. not thousands, multiple thousands, but 1,200. And I commend the Times article to everybody to take a look at. And the point is, we now are at a much higher level. And this gets me sort of to the heart of the issue. Back in 95, transit crime was 3%.
We're not in 95, we're in current times where you have problems,
Let
Bob.
me finish the sentence. Back in 95, crime was 3%. Right now, crime is 1.7% of the city's crime. We are providing, when I say we, the city is providing over 10% of the police resources are in transit. So 0.7% of the crime.
We,
is
the
getting
city,
more.
is that what you said? We, the
I
city?
said the city is
Said
providing.
we are providing.
Forgive me. As the city
That's
is
Mayor
providing.
Bloomberg.
The city is currently.
Mayor de Blasio.
Mayor Giuliani, at the time, wanted 1,000. Right now, under Mayor de Blasio, as I understand the numbers, and the chief can certainly talk about, we are providing more than twice of the agreement with Giuliani. And what is most important is there has to be a sense of the proportions of what we're talking about. The city has now increased its contribution in terms of staff to more than 10% of its police force to fight 1.7% of the crime. I have no issue with should the surge continue. Should the MTA surge its MTA workers? It absolutely should. People need to be safe, but there needs to be some reality in terms of when Mr. Mack says we need more. So if the answer isn't 10% of the resources, should it be 15% of the resources? What percentage of the city resources should go into a situation where there's 1.7% of the crime? And I want to mention one last thing, and then I'll stop, which is the issue of the crime in the transit authority versus on the commuter rail. And it was interesting comparing what is page 92 in the transit board book with page 28 in the commuter rail board book. And while, as Chief Riley said, that it is true that felony assaults are up while major crime is down 10% in April. And overall for the year, major crime is down 47%, while felony is up 18%. You should look at the commuter rails. And in the commuter rails, I understand it's a smaller number, but as Chairman Foy pointed out, the ridership is a tiny fraction of what is at the police. There, while the city's major felonies are down 47%, it's down only 5%, with ridership much further down. And while major felonies are up 18% in the transit authority, they're up 83% on the commuter rails. So I'm not saying that that's an answer and that we should therefore forget about this. I'm saying there needs to be careful proportionality of issues and careful thought, and we need to join together. I'll start with what was initially said. We need to collaborate and work together. We need to figure out how technology, interdisciplinary work, how the city and the MTA, how civilians in uniform can all work together. And one last thing, we should be capping the federal dollars, just as it was necessary to clean because of COVID-19. It is necessary also to do more policing. That should be part of the federal assistance that pays. And it should be a collaborative effort between the city and the MTA.
Before I call on Sarah Feinberg, Pat Warren, Commissioner Lacewell, Commissioner Schwartz, I just want to make the following point, which is that references to staffing years and decades ago is belied by the fact that the city in February surged over 600 officers and have committed an additional 250 plus a number of auxiliary officers, et cetera, would suggest that we're in a significantly different time and place and a critical one given the city's recovery. And let me call on Sarah next.
Thanks. I mean, Bob, you and I have been going back and forth on this for days. You asked me a lot of questions about vacancies in our public safety departments. You and I had a bunch of conversations about it. None of that information you've shared here, but for those who are curious, what Bob is referring to are vacancies in places like guards who protect some of our facilities, guards who protect some of our yards. To be clear, if we decide that we're not going to hire a yard to protect a facility, or we're not going to hire a guard to protect a facility, and we decide we're going to hire a police officer instead, you are both moving that salary over to MTA Police, and you're deciding that you're not going to hire a guard. So it's really not apples to apples, although you sort of laid it out as if it's apple to apples. You are correct that we've had some retirements from MTA Police. I am sure that you know that NYPD has had significant attrition too. Commissioner Shea says you're down 2,000 police officers. Again, people retire every year from police departments and from agencies, and yes, we have to keep up with the hiring. You mentioned it's hard to hire. It's not that hard to hire. It's hard to hire when you're a hiring freeze that is that was started by a pandemic. But as we have informed you over the last several days, we lifted that hiring freeze long previous so that we could start hiring again. So look, I appreciate the explanation of an MOU that I've read, I think 500 times. I believe that the 1,023 officers, perhaps Chief O'Reilly thinks that 1,023 officers in a system that is regularly carrying more than 2 million people a day is right. Maybe she doesn't think it's right. I'm grateful that we're going to have deployment information shared with us. Bob, you thought that you would be able to get a number for us prior to today on how many officers are actually deployed into the system. I would be shocked if it was anywhere near the 1,023. If it is anywhere near the 1,023, it's off by more than 50% from what we've been, what's been suggested previously. But, you know.
Sarah, can I speak to that, please?
Please, yeah.
So we have surged over 1,100 officers. That's above and beyond what our daily number is in transit.
Full time.
It's 1,100 per day into transit that we have surged using our PSP people, the 250 that ride the trains in the morning, the 250 that ride the trains in the evening. That's above and beyond that 500 that we surged earlier in the year. And I shared those numbers with Bob, so he has them.
So sorry, to be clear, 500
full-time?
500 full-time. That's
No.
of the 640. So it's after stabbings, it was 644. That got scaled back to 500. That's 500.
No. So let me just clear the 644 and the 500. We dedicated a minimum of 500. So there were days when that number was 644. So it's not, it's a minimum of 500, but sometimes it's more. And I'm happy to have more. So after the mayor's directed that he wanted 250 officers riding the trains, that's 250 for the 4 hour in the morning rush hour. And then it's another 250 for the evening rush hour, 4 hours. So I've shared all these numbers with Bob, and I'll just give you an example for today. Our original coverage for our normal coverage today would be about 1,450 officers in patrolling transit. Today we have 2,663. That's a significant increase. And when you mention the 1,023, do I think that number is a good number? No, of course not. That's why we're surging. We recognize what you recognize, that we needed to put more people into transit, and they're in transit. And I see them, and I know you did the survey, but I would look back to, the survey period. I believe it was from the 15th to the 24th. I looked back at our weekly contacts with your MTA employees. We had 5,000 interactions with your conductors alone. That's not even quantifying our station agents. So I know the cops are out there. I see them out there. It's disturbing to see that survey was done and they didn't see them, but I guarantee they're out there, sir. And we're working with you in partnership with you. You asked for additional patrol. We gave you. We asked you for cameras. You gave us. So it's a team effort. It's a team effort, and we are working with you.
I totally agree. And that is, I will tell you, thank you. That is the most information we have gotten on any of this since like February. So that is so helpful to know that 500 full-time after the stabbings, minimum 500 full-time after the stabbings in February that sometimes surged up to 644. And then an additional 250 officers in the morning rush and an additional 250 officers in the evening rush.
And an additional 272 officers that Patrol Services Bureau are giving to us on a daily basis to perform platform patrol. So we are providing a wealth of deployment into transit. And I think it's going to prove dividends in the near future.
That is very helpful. And look, the fact that the number was previously 1450, I mean, I think we would say, I'm very glad to hear that it's up to 2663. That feels much more reasonable. I mean, when I hear 1450, I feel like 1450, obviously the officers work in teams of 2, that gets you down into 700s, and that's over 3 shifts. So that's, that is not a lot of officers to cover 472 stations and, hundreds of miles of track. And so 2663 is obviously a number that I think we'd all be much more comfortable with. But this is very helpful. And I will say that, we have never gotten any of this information from City Hall. And it says to me again that the more that we can have direct conversations with you without a lot of others intervening is very helpful.
Thank you.
All right, let me call on Pat Warren, Commissioner Lacewell, Commissioner Schwartz.
Thank you. Just a couple things. One, I want to assure the board and Commissioner Lynn that we really have a very talented, intelligent, and dedicated staff that includes civilians and police officers that are spending an inordinate amount of times studying this problem, figuring out what plans for developing plans, and then executing plans for security. So there's a huge amount of effort that goes into this every day to these huge intractable problems of homelessness, crime, and vandalism, and you picked the topic. So please be assured that there is a huge effort going on that. In terms of hiring, we'll say it one more time. I feel like I'm not getting heard on this. We are in the process of continuing to hire up. It takes time to actually recruit them, send them through training, and put them into place. The timeline is set. All the systems are go, and we are hiring up to those positions in the police force. And I think everybody is aware of those timelines as they are right now. And now that we're out of we have our fiscal challenges are partially behind us, we have the ability to do that. And so that's really great news, and I think it'll be helpful for everybody out there. In terms of other resources going after the problem, we have, as I've pointed out in my comments, we have not only the CCTV cameras and other technologies that's out there, but we are putting security guards into the system, which is not normally something that we would do, but it is something that comes at great expense to us. So there's a couple hundred of them out there now that we are, in order to provide that additional layer of presence and security, so that we can then vector police into when there is a condition that needs to be looked at. So we're putting huge resources into this problem that are above and beyond what we normally do. So with that, Chair, I'll turn it to
Thank you, Pat. Commissioner Lacewell.
Thanks, Pat. I appreciate, Chief O'Reilly, the cooperative, collaborative tone of your remarks and the dialogue with Sarah Feinberg. We all have the same fiduciary obligation, right? Which is to help build back better after the pandemic and with the economic damage that's been done. And building a strong MTA system is going to help the city, help the state, but it also helps a lot of people, right? Who have economic livelihoods at stake. And everything that we do to help people feel better about getting onto the trains, help employers to bring people back to work is going to inure to the good of everyone. So the more we can continue on this good road of let's share information, let's talk it through. We could do it privately. It could be a limited number of people. Sarah is a very trustworthy individual in my experience. And she's been talking about this issue for a long time. We've all got the same goal, make it safer. We understand resources are limited across the board. We're going to be transitioning to a new mayor. And we might as well, all of us, start making that transition now with respect to the issues that count, that are going to take a lot of steps to get to where we need to be. And every step we take together is only going to make it better. So thank you.
Commissioner Schwartz.
Thank you, Pat. First, I just want to, for the record, unfortunately, I feel that my fellow Commissioner Lynn was a little misleading and disingenuous when he started his conversation by saying that it's unfortunate we're not having committee meetings and we're not having the opportunity in the committee setting to talk about issues such as this. That's not an accurate statement. We do have committee meetings. We have Zoom committee meetings. And as Bob knows, last week when we had committee meetings in finance, we had a long conversation about fare evasion, and in the New York City Transit Committee, we had a long conversation about safety in the subway system, as well as safety in the transit system. As a matter of fact, and Commissioner Lynn knows this, I raised the issue that the MTA needs to come up with a new MOU that's sitting around and using an MOU that was written and agreed to back in 1995 when we're in 2021, 2022, doesn't make a lot of sense. The world has changed a lot since 1995, and what the system needs and how we need to police the system to maximize safety in our subway system and on our buses has changed. And there are new policing strategies out there, and working off an old MOU, and clearly Bob knew that because we talked about these things when we had the committee meeting. And so I look forward to working with Sarah and other people on drafting this new MOU, especially the fact that we're having a new mayor come January. This is the best time to negotiate a new strategy and a new contract and a new arrangement between the MTA and New York City / NYPD. The other thing is, you know, not to get controversial, but we haven't, I assume the MOU that we have in place that's signed is a binding contract. If it's not a legally binding contract, fine. If it is a legally binding contract, and we just should make sure that all parties are abiding by what's in a legally binding contract. It's getting, in my mind, tiring and frustrating that every time we have a board meeting, we kind of like talk past each other in terms of what is going on or what is not going on, what is the problem, what is not the problem. And it gets very confusing for the public. Is the system safe? Is the system not safe? Are there parts of the system safe? Are there parts of the system not safe? Is it safe for the transit workers? Is it safe for the riding public or not? I mean, and I think one of the recommendations, a couple of recommendations I want to make to Sarah, to you, Pat, to the board. First of all, I think we need to bring in outside people, outside experts. I think we should be open to looking to bring in someone like a Bill Bratton, a Ray Kelly, someone of that stature that has run the NYPD, that understands the transit system here and help make recommendations and guide us on what kind of policing strategies. It's not just about manpower. It's about where you deploy, what kind of policing strategies need to be used. And that would also probably go a long way in how we structure a new MOU. And so I would bring in some outside experts. We spend money on consultants all the time to help guide us in coming up with new policies, smart policies. And what we need to do here is come up with a new smart policing strategy to kind of address this issue. The second thing is, when I hear some of the statistics on repeat offenders, you know, your head wants to explode. You don't even want to scratch your head. That would be an understatement. I don't understand how in our criminal justice system, you could have somebody arrested 96 times for crimes committed in the subway system, like 37 or whatever the number was, were actual felonies. And this individual is still out there committing crimes in the subway system. I do not understand that. And, it sounds to me that either this is not a priority within our criminal justice system, or because there's so many other things going on and people have decided not to prioritize this, or there's something wrong with our legal system, our judicial system, or there's something wrong with the criminal justice laws that are on our books. But again, I would suggest that whether we hire them or we get them to do it on a pro bono basis, we get some former ADAs, we get some former people that are from the judicial system and figure out what is it that we need Albany to pass to fix this. And because there's no way we can ban people from the system, because unless you're going to have an armed guard at every entrance, these people, whether they have mental health problems or they have other issues and they just don't care, they're going to find their way into the system and they're going to continue to commit crimes. And when I hear these statistics of the majority of these felonies are being committed by the same people over and over and over again, we need to come up with some new ideas and new ways to kind of deal with this thing, because we keep saying the same thing over and over and over again. And I'm not saying trying something new is going to solve the problem, but we need to start trying new things, and we need to bring in people from the outside. I don't believe we have the expertise and the resources internally, to come up with the right solutions. We should bring in people that have lived this and lived through this. They're really kind of the boots on the ground type of mindset that know what needs to happen to make a difference, to make a change. So, again, to me, we're not solving anything. To me, we're just talking and talking and talking, and quite frankly, we've been talking past each other. And it's great that if we got new information today. I don't think we should be getting new information at a public board meeting. The collaboration and the communication should be done when we're not having public board meetings, so that when we are meeting in public, we're not arguing about information or the lack of it, but we're being presented with agreed upon information. But again, we need to live in 2021, 2022, which is, just 6-7 months in May. We need to work with a new administration and a new mayor that will take office in January. We need to come up with a new MOU, and that MOU needs to reflect new policing strategies to enable and better ensure our workforce and our public that the system that they're using every day is as safe as we can possibly make it. Thank you.
All right, last comment from Commissioner Albert, and then we'll move on.
Pat, can I please also 30 seconds for Vinny, please?
Yes, Vinny. Andrew and Commissioner Tessitore.
Yeah, thank you so much. So we've heard a lot of figures today. Some of these we're hearing for the first time. There's a minimum of 500 officers in the system, but sometimes it's up to 644. But there's a total of 2,663 officers assigned. Can we learn, or can we get follow-up on how many of those 2,663 are in the system at any given time? References were made to morning and evening rush hour. Are there officers in the system all through the day and all through the night? Are they equally dispersed throughout the system so that not one part of the system feels less safe than another? We don't have answers to any of these things. It's all very confusing. So how many are in the system at any given time of the 2,663 total that was given earlier in this meeting?
Pat, can I talk for a minute?
Well, Commissioner Tessitore is going to go next. And Bob, I think we've exhausted this and want to move on.
I think there are a
Vinny.
couple of comments I'd like to respond to.
I appreciate it. Just 30 seconds. Let's not forget about our frontline workforce in the system and how they can help and weigh in this. We talk about uniform presence, agents, conductors on trains, open ticket booths, cleaners in the system, ambassadors. There are so many positions in our system that could be performing other tasks while they're constantly aware of their surroundings and they could help. We honor them often in so many situations of them weighing in and playing a part in helping and calling for help. So, it's always about policing. Let's not forget that in frontline presence in the system can help us tremendously in communicating where resources need to be put, when police need to be called. Let's not forget about that. Let's not talk about taking bodies out of the system, because some of your frontline workers can help tremendously making the place safe.
So if I might I'll be very quick. I believe the concept of the average daily operational strength, which was talked about in the old agreement, is exactly what Sarah, what the chief, and what Commissioner Albert is talking about, which is what do we have each day? And I think that is a critical issue that's important. I believe it is time to return to that agreement and make it a 21st century agreement. And I totally agree with Larry. It is time for everybody to sit down and figure out where we're going. Who should be doing what? As Vinny said, what should be MTA workers and civilians? What should be the MTA police? What should be the city police? What should be social workers? All those things need to come together. And I am all for, as soon as possible, a team getting together to talk about what this should look like for the 21st century.
All right, thank you. Tom Quigley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one point of clarification of something that Commissioner Schwartz said, and that is that the committee meetings are actually held today concurrently with the board meeting. I think what Commissioner Schwartz was referring to were informational briefings that we held last week, at which attendance is not taken, a quorum is not established, no action is taken, and there is no vote on anything at those informational briefings. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I move on to ask Bob Foran for a finance update, I just want to make sure that I'm not taking sides in the Army-Navy battle. And I want to recognize the service of Commissioner Fleischer, who's a graduate of the Naval Academy and served in the Navy for a number of years, and Commissioner Glucksman, who served valiantly in the U.S. Army in Vietnam. Bob.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hey, Pat, it's Kevin. David Jones is trying to speak, but I think he has some technical issues because we're not hearing him.
Sounds like a chip. You sound like a chipmunk, which is funny on Saturday morning.
David, we can't hear you. David, we can't hear you.
Hey, Pat, you're actually also having some sound difficulties, and so is Quigley.
Can you hear me now? All right,
Yeah.
let me turn to Bob Foran and see whether we can address whatever audio issue we've got.
I hear you fine, Pat.
Okay, I will be very, very brief. As David Keller will report in his presentation of Budget Watch during the Finance Committee, operating revenues continue to come in above budget. This was our hope because, as you all know, the budget was based upon our worst case forecast. We're continuing to work on the July financial plan, and updated operating revenue forecast will be reported at the July board meeting. Mr. Chairman, that's it.
Thank you, Bob. Next, Jano Lever is going to provide an update on C&D and the Capital Program Oversight Committee. Jano.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to assure the board that no police officers are required for most of our projects that are under construction, so hopefully we can get through this promptly. This month, we're Yeah, this month's CPOC is the focus on what we call integrated projects. Those are the large, complex, costly projects that have interdependent sub-elements. And East Side Access and Mainline Expansion, also known as Third Track, are the two biggest under construction right now, and I'll be talking about them in just a moment. But before I turn to those, I just want to remind folks who didn't see it that we took a huge step forward the week before last on another large integrated project that all of us I know are quite passionate about. That's Metro North Penn Station Access. On May 13th, we held an event with Governor Cuomo in Co-op City to announce the project is getting started again. It had been on pause because of the pandemic, but we're resuming the procurement that was interrupted. This is a project that truly checks all the boxes. It is a huge benefit to the regional economy because it connects Metro North customers to Penn Station via Amtrak's Hellgate line, and it cuts travel times between Westchester, Connecticut, and yes, the Bronx, from those areas to the growing west side of Manhattan Business District, as well as to parts north, because reverse commute is a huge issue and a huge trend in our region. Equity, a huge focus of the Biden administration and of all of us. By building 4 new train stations in the Bronx at Co-op City, Parkchester, Morris Park, and Hunts Point, we are giving transit disadvantaged neighborhoods much better access to jobs, to education, and to everything this region offers. For example, the commute from Co-op City, which now requires an express bus to West Midtown, will go down from 75 minutes to just 25 minutes, and from Hunts Point to West Midtown around Penn Station will take just 16 minutes instead of 45 minutes or more. Environmental benefits. The estimated 3,000 daily car trips are going to be diverted to transit. This is especially important in the Bronx, which, like many of our disadvantaged neighborhoods and neighborhoods of color, which suffers from huge asthma rates. And last, it's economically inefficient. It's economically efficient, not inefficient, because we are rebuilding Amtrak's existing right-of-way. We are squeezing more mass transit out of infrastructure that already exists. And in this case, we don't have to build a brand new line from scratch. So this is an amazing project that, as I say, checks all the boxes. We'll be selecting a design builder before the end of the year to complete the design and to build those 4 new stations, and to turn this existing 2-track railroad into what will, over most of the line, be a 4-track railroad. This is a huge step forward in the restoration of our historic capital program. East Side Access, the biggest transit project underway in North America, with a 350,000 square foot facility with 8 tracks. It's in fact the first time anyone's built an 8-track rail station in the United States since, I believe, the 1950s. My friends Glucksman and Albert may correct me, but I believe that's the case. The civil work on the East Side Access terminal under Grand Central is done. All of the track is in. Most of the architectural finishes are pretty close to being completed. As you can tell in the pictures, this is really looking like a real train station. And it's all been done without disrupting the economy in the center of Midtown. We're in the systems testing phase. This continues to be, as we're honest with ourselves and everybody, an incredibly complicated project because of the way it was originally procured, with 50 separate contracts that continue to run into each other. And it's no secret that we've had challenges with certain contractors' performance. But I do have confidence that the team, led by Project CEO Rob Troop, is going to deliver, as we have continued to recommit to the 2022 opening for revenue service. And I just want to reaffirm that we are determined to make good on that date. The Long Island Railroad Mainline Expansion, also known to all of us as Third Track. We're ending there the end of civil work. Retaining walls, sound walls built, right-of-way widened, 8 grade crossings, 8 all promised 20 plus years ago by the state of New York to be eliminated. We got them done in just 2 years, and that dramatically increases safety for those communities, reducing noise and all the inconveniences of those grade crossings at locations where alone among railroads in the United States, you have grade crossings where the trains are passing at 80 miles an hour. Imagine that, and we're still putting cars and people across them. It's really a benefit to have those grade crossings eliminated. And all of this has been completed on schedule and on budget. Now the team is focused on installing the track and the systems and finishing up the stations. You see some of them that are in process. We're engaged right now in a scheduled recovery effort to see how we can recover the time that was sacrificed when the project was shut down while an investigation of that March safety incident took place. But to get it back on track, I'm confident that we will have, I'm optimistic about it because we have, unlike other big projects, a single design builder contractor. We have a solid project management team, and we have the partnership of labor. I want to acknowledge Anthony Simon, the leader of the Smart Transportation Union, who represents a lot of our railway workers who participate in supporting capital work. Mr. Simon and I took a walk with former MTA Chair Tom Prendergast, who is working with my organization. He's a career safety professional, and we had a very productive conversation about how do we continue to grow the scale of work while improving communications and collaboration on all fronts. So that was another positive step, and I want to acknowledge the union leadership for that. Long Island Railroad Elmont Station. The new station at Elmont, which is related to the third track, is moving quickly. This month marks a 1-year anniversary of when we awarded the contract, and as you can see from the before and after photos on the screen, we're moving fast. We fully expect to meet the deadline for the eastbound platform to be ready by the time the Islanders begin their hockey season this coming fall. ADA. We're continuing to move really aggressively to advance ADA projects, even as the capital program remains somewhat constrained by the realities of the status of congestion pricing and some of the other uncertainties. The package of 8 new ADA stations was awarded last December. Those stations have begun construction. That package came in under budget. We issued an RFQ in February for the several 3 stations associated with the 14th Street complex. That was also federally funded from repurposed or redirected federal funds, evidence of our prioritization of accessibility. An RFP went out in April for 6 new stations, as well as the replacement of 5 existing elevators at 2 stations on the Flushing line. Later this year, we'll be issuing RFQs for at least 2 more stations. 68th Street Hunter College, which has lagged for years. One of my priorities is to get that project going. It's been many years in discussion with communities and otherwise, and not just communities, really with one apartment building or 2, and also the J Street Borough Hall project. We want to get those going. And finally, I just want to note that we continue to advance installation of customer information, digital screens, together with our partners at Outfront. This has turned into a great tool for communicating the strong and very successful message about masking, and that kind of communications capacity is going to really be important as we bring New Yorkers back to the system and back to work. So we appreciate our partnership with Outfront, and that's going to continue to grow and strengthen. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Jano. Any questions for Jano? Commissioner Calisi.
Thank you, Jano. As always, it's great to see these projects and everything moving along. Although I am a Ranger fan, New York Ranger fan, I could say that. I know we have some Islander fans on the line. I do want to see the new station. I do want to see the new stadium for the Islanders. My assumption is that the full accessibility is there. I know your work is, but I just want to I think it just needs to be said. That's all.
Absolutely.
Okay, and then secondly, so we got a total of 17 stations that we're looking at for accessibility, right? Plus 5 elevators replacements, correct?
I haven't totaled it all up, but I count on your math.
All right. Oh, that's a problem. All right. Thanks about that. And then one other thing,
Just to Mr. Khaleesi, bear in mind that some of these were a couple from prior programs. So what we're doing is it's not only the 20 to 24 stations, it's also stations where the drawings were in a state where we could push them out the door and get the work done. So I know we're all mindful of the 70 station goal, but some of these are prior programs.
Okay. Yeah, I'm aware of that, and thank you for clarifying that. I think the public needs to hear that. And then separate for this, are we planning on opening any of the bathrooms throughout the transit system? I know that some people with disabilities have been looking for them, and I know they've been closed. So I'll just leave it at that. Thank you, Jano, again for your report, and thank you for all the veterans out there.
Thank
you for your service.
Any other questions for Jano?
A quick one.
Andrew.
Jano, I heard you mention the eastbound platform at the Elmont station will be ready for the opening game. Will there be a shuttle bus provided so that people can get home from that game to Queens Village or Belrose or another nearby station, since only the eastbound would be open?
Yeah, there's a whole operations plan. I'm not going to try to share it with you, but your colleague, Ms. Mihalsis, is nodding and she knows it well. So, but
Okay,
there is
great.
a whole operations plan for doing that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good, thanks. Let's move on to approval of the minutes. The minutes of the April joint meeting and minutes from each committee have been distributed to all members. Are there any corrections or omissions? Andrew, your catch is been included. If there's nothing else, I move to approve the minutes. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. The minutes are approved. Thank you. I'm going to call on Phil Eng for a report on the Long Island Railroad. Phil.
Thank you, Pat. I'll start off with ridership and how we're seeing it bounce back as more and more people return to the system. It's without a doubt that New York State's aggressive vaccination effort is helping our state, and our public is heeding the guidance as New York comes back stronger than ever. It's with great optimism as ridership is continuing to grow now that the vaccine has wider distribution and COVID rates continue to drop. And as you've mentioned, we've seen our daily weekday ridership grow with another record high, even yesterday hitting 35% of our pre-pandemic levels, while our weekend ridership has come back even stronger. Our highest day this past Sunday marked a 59% return. This tells us that people know mass transit is safe and is a great choice over driving when they're looking to relax and avoid traffic. The same patterns we saw prior to the pandemic. Not only is the railroad looking to support the island with reliable mass transportation, but I'm extremely proud of all the efforts by Long Island Railroad and MTA employees who have coordinated with the state to offer vaccine pop-up sites. At Penn, Hempstead, Hicksville, many Long Island Railroad riders and neighbors spoke to me about their appreciation that we brought the vaccine to them. It has been a huge success. I also had the pleasure of visiting New York City Transit's Supton Archer site beneath Long Island Railroad ticket office here in Jamaica, and couldn't have been more pleased to see a big contingent of foreign travelers just off the air train from JFK getting the shot before they venture out to enjoy New York. We truly hope that the MTA customers and all the public will continue to take advantage of these easy, quick, and free ways to get vaccinated. This noble deed goes a long way in helping keep everyone safe and restoring confidence and a sense of normalcy. And we continue to make every effort and remind customers that masks remain mandatory on our trains and our platform stations at all times. All of the heroic efforts by the workforce throughout the pandemic are paying dividends. Working closely with local electeds and communities across Long Island, we're striving to ensure that we're coordinated to best meet the needs of the island and support the local economy as more and more businesses reopen and capacity restrictions are relaxed. The great news is that we've officially restored and kicked off our summer service, including the famed Cannonball to Montauk, which will run this Friday, May 28th, leaving from Penn Station. And we're also happy to be providing train service for the Belmont Stakes on Saturday, June 5th. Thank you to all those who have returned and to those who are considering it. Know that we are committed to rebuilding our infrastructure to keep improving safety and reliability. And with that, on June 14th, we'll be coming out of a timetable change and some service adjustments to support vital work. On the Long Beach branch, we're continuing Hurricane Sandy restoration work. On Babylon branch, we're performing state of good repair on interlocking and third rail near Babylon. And on the weekend of June 12th to the 13th, we have a main line shutdown in support of the Mainline Expansion project at 12th Street, New Hyde Park, to construct a pedestrian underpass. All this work continues to fulfill our commitment to providing reliable and safe service. In April, Long Island Railroad trains operated on time at 96.5%, exceeding our goal of 94%. And so far for the year, we're performing better than we did last year, last year, which was our highest performance in modern day history. Our on-time metrics to date are just above 96% for the year. So I'm proud of our team who is constantly pushing day in and day out to provide better and better service for the public we serve. The railroad has never been safer, cleaner, and more reliable than it is today. And regarding safety, I want to acknowledge the heroic efforts that took place in response to the May 5th all hands on deck fire that erupted at a waste facility in Westbury. We shut down the tracks to protect the safety of our riders, train crews, and the firefighters. The Westbury Fire Department and every single fire department across Nassau County, including several from Suffolk, responded to battle the blaze. Our own Long Island Railroad managers and workforce responded as well to ensure timely and appropriate support for them. Because of everyone's efforts, there were no injuries and we're able to safely restore service the following day. My heartfelt gratitude to all the volunteer firefighters across Long Island who put their lives on the line protecting others. And we've also reconstituted training with these departments to enhance their safety response given the unique hazards of working alongside a railroad. So as Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month draws to a close, I'm proud to stand side by side with all my colleagues at MTA and fellow state agencies to acknowledge the contributions of the AAPI community, to embrace our diversity and denounce hate. Grateful to be a participant in several AAPI events, including a statewide event led by the Division of Human Rights. And last week I stood with Kathy Rinaldi as we hosted a joint Metro North Long Island Railroad AAPI event, and that was widely attended by both offices. And tomorrow I look forward to joining Carolyn Proconi and the MTA Office of the Inspector General as they host their event. So as we celebrate Memorial Day weekend, please remember to honor all of our heroic military that keep us safe, and remember our veterans that have made the ultimate sacrifice for our nation. In closing, with great optimism toward the future, we're looking forward to more normalcy this summer and returning ridership as we're proud to serve the public and help everyone get around and avoid driving. Thank you to all the customers who continue to wear their mask in our system. And thanks to those who have made the healthy decision to get vaccinated to keep everyone safe. Thank you all, and remember to take the train. Long Island has no procurements this month. Chairman Foy, thank you very much.
Phil, thank you. Any questions for Phil? Andrew.
Quick question. Phil, one of the reasons for the service cut on the Port Washington branch was track and tie replacement. Do we have a time frame for when that work will proceed or will be finished?
We do. I believe that is with this June timetable. That work that we've been doing with the existing block will be completed. We do have other work that we need to finish along the Port Washington branch that will probably start in July. But then we hope to conclude that before the Labor Day time period and when we really expect ridership to continue to boom.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to call on Kathy Rinaldi to report on Metro North.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Picking up on what you had said at the top of the meeting with respect to ridership, as is the case on Long Island, weekday ridership continues to show encouraging signs of recovery. Last week, our ridership was up 12.3% from a month ago. We were up 24.4% from the previous COVID high, which had been in the third week of October, and at 28.9% of pre-COVID ridership in the comparable month of May of 2019, an increase of 1.5% from last week. This past Saturday's ridership hit a pandemic-era record on Metro North when we carried 94,500 customers, which comes to 62.7% of our pre-COVID Saturday ridership. Last Sunday was also our highest Sunday ridership this spring, exceeding Mother's Day, which was 2 Sundays ago, with 61% of our pre-COVID Sunday ridership from the comparable month of May 2019. We are pleased to see so many riders returning to Metro North, and it's not a coincidence that our busiest day was a beautiful Saturday with great weather. Leisure and discretionary travel are among our strongest markets right now because Metro North is not just for commuters. It's for anyone who's looking for an affordable, easy, convenient way to get around the region. The initial ridership increase that we're seeing coincides with the recent launch of the MTA's Take the Train, Take the Bus campaign to encourage New Yorkers to return to a more reliable and cleaner system. I was excited to help kick off Hudson Valley Restaurant Week earlier this month at Tarrytown Station as we welcome more and more of our customers back and remind them that Metro North is the best way to experience all that the Hudson Valley has to offer. More than 100 restaurants across the Metro North footprint participated in Hudson Valley Restaurant Week, and nearly half are located near our stations. The Hudson Valley is a true culinary and cultural destination that's worth the trip. The New York is Open digital campaign features images of the region's great open spaces that can be reached by Metro North. Places like Walkway over the Hudson in Poughkeepsie, the Appalachian Trail, or Westchester's Riverwalk, all are great attractions and reasons to take the train. It's going to take all of us to pull off New York's greatest comeback ever, but I know we can do it, and Metro North will be there to keep the region moving every step of the way. Earlier this month, I was excited to join Chairman Foy at Grand Central in launching the MTA's public vaccination program. Given its central location in Midtown, Grand Central was perfectly positioned for this mission, as the location is at the forefront of the MTA's safety initiatives during the entire pandemic. First with testing, then with employee vaccines, now followed by vaccinations for all. We were also happy to support the state effort with the temporary vaccination site at Ossining. I visited there a couple weeks back. We saw customers take advantage of the free vaccine while passing through the station and receiving 2 free one-way tickets on Metro North Railroad. Tomorrow, I'll be joining many of my colleagues at the MTA for our 11th Mask Force event. I'll be handing out free masks to customers at Croton Harmon Station, but we'll also be supporting mask events at Mount Vernon East and Stamford, as well as Grand Central Terminal. Included in this month's agenda is the joint MNR-LIRR update on post-PTC implementation and project closeout since full PTC functionality went into effect in December for both railroads. PTC is a new way of operating for all railroads, and we are all focused on maintaining and upgrading this important safety enhancement system. PTC maintenance continues for both railroads as we monitor reliability and safety, as well as implement system software updates to make operational improvements and correct variances. A software release is expected for next month for deployment on our M8 fleet on the New Haven line, which will resolve priority variances and improve overall New Haven line service. All of our trains continue to operate with full PTC functionality on the entire Metro North territory except the Waterbury branch in Connecticut, which is currently exempt from the federal PTC mandate due to the small number of trains. Nonetheless, the state of Connecticut has opted to have a cab signal system installed on the branch to improve overall safety, and PTC is being implemented as an overlay to that new signal system by the end of this year. While we're speaking about the Waterbury branch, while operating the reduced schedule, we continue to accelerate and undertake critical infrastructure improvements which can be accomplished at this time while minimizing inconveniences to our customers. For starters, we have work taking place this summer on the branch, including railroad crossing improvements, the replacement of railroad ties and rail, and track resurfacing along the branch that will make travel safer and more reliable for our riders. This work is a priority of the Connecticut Department of Transportation, and it will enable more reliable Waterbury branch service when completed. To accommodate this work, bus service is being provided as an additional travel option for the affected customers. Included in today's agenda is our quarterly update on track and infrastructure projects and maintaining them in a state of good repair. Here are some highlights from that report. Our crews have replaced 3,500 railroad ties and installed 5 miles of new rail so far this year. We've used a rail grinding machine to restore the rail profile and ensure a smooth ride on 60 miles of track, while other crews have been busy resurfacing over 18 miles of track. We've replaced 14 track switches that improves overall service reliability and ensures operational flexibility. We remain focused on repairs to overhead vehicular bridges and undergrade bridges that carry our trains. These incredible efforts are due to the hard work of our track and structures personnel, and I want to thank them for their efforts in maintaining our infrastructure and thank them on behalf of our customers. As Phil mentioned, this past month for AAPI Heritage Month, both railroads teamed up this month for a virtual joint celebration of Asian American Pacific Islander heritage by recognizing the many contributions of our collective AAPI workforce. The forum featured Metro-North's Anish Gandhi, who some of you know is Executive Director of our PTC project, as well as Michael Lee, Assistant Chief Safety Officer, Technology and Projects in the Security Department, along with our colleagues from Metro-North. From Long Island Railroad, excuse me. Metro-North also continued our Rail Stories feature first begun during Black History Month by focusing on colleagues from such varied countries as Nepal, China, India, and Hong Kong. These rail stories familiarize the Metro-North workforce with the diversity that we strive to foster and expand. We have no procurements or action items on this month's agenda. I want to now step up to the podium to take a moment to recognize 4 members of the Metro-North workforce who saved a man's life about a year ago. So I'm going to ask Chief Mechanical Officer Jim Heimbecker, Chairman Foy, and Chief McGran to join me up at the podium. I'm really proud to be up here today to acknowledge the incredible bravery and efforts of the 4 employees who joined us today. Almost a year ago, when the pandemic was in full swing, 4 of our High Bridge maintenance of equipment employees rescued a man who had suffered severe injuries to his hand while trying to cross nearby CSX tracks very late in the evening. The man had attempted to crawl under a CSX train that had stopped at High Bridge when the train had started up again. The man stumbled over to an area close to our High Bridge facility where the 4 employees could see that he was holding his left arm and they could see that he was very seriously injured. They immediately took the man's t-shirt and tied it around his upper arm to stem the flow of the wound, which extended from his hand that appeared to be cut severely to his elbow. While practicing safe COVID procedures such as donning surgical gloves and keeping a safe distance, they used towels and a rubber tourniquet from the facility's bloodborne pathogen infection control kit to stem the flow of blood, passing supplies like a team in an emergency room might do. The 4 employees continued to give the man emergency care. They called the EMTs and made sure he did not lose consciousness before help arrived. Their quick thinking and immediate action saved this man's life. These 4 men are receiving a civilian commendation from the MTA Police Department today for an act of outstanding bravery or heroism, or an outstanding contribution to law enforcement by which the individual has demonstrated the characteristics of personal courage and integrity. Chairman Foy, MTA Police Chief McGran, Jim Heimbecker, and I would like to recognize them at this board meeting for their extraordinary heroism, their quick thinking, and their quick action in saving this man's life. As I said, the 4 employees are here today. I'm going to ask them to come up so that they can receive these certificates. Fernando Casanova.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, okay, great. Okay. Okay. Nico Palazzolo.
Thank you.
Eric Rivera.
Thank you.
And Ruben Soto.
Thank you.
We can have our honorees stand in the middle. We'll have Chief and everybody stand on the side. So just gentlemen, stand together here. Okay, stand to this side. Sure. Kathy, stand next to Pat.
Okay. Oh, my mask is over there, so.
And sir, if you can come around to Chief Green's side.
We're smiling.
Hi, this concludes my remarks, just thanking them again for their bravery, and I'd also like to thank the Metro North Veterans Workforce as we head into Memorial Day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kathy. Any questions for Kathy? All right, good. I'm going to take a slight
Pat, my hand was raised in the little box here, so.
Neil.
If you don't mind. Yeah, thanks. So, a comment and a question. First of all, Kathy, I know it's very hard to think about positive train control in the midst of all you have been through in your organization, but I do appreciate what you got done, and when we're all back to commuting at some more intense level, I think the riding public will, if they don't know, we need to be reminded about the increased level of safety that you've provided through that Herculean effort that you and Phil and your organization did. So thank you for that. A question. So I had the benefit of riding yesterday into the city, going out of Croton, even though I live in the small town of Garrison, New York, because of train availabilities and time. And the train was definitely packed, and it was nice to see so many people back riding the rails. I was actually amazed that it was almost like a normal morning commute. There were two people sitting in the three-seater with no one sitting in the middle, and one person always sitting in the two-seater. So it felt like a normal commute, which is great. I would love your thoughts without holding you to it at all. I'm not trying to hold you to a specific date, but what is the range you're looking at of ridership to return some of the more local stations to a more traditional schedule that we've had? I will just state very selfishly, for those of us in places like Garrison, New York, for example, the train time now, given we're running them very locally, is an hour and 26 minutes to Grand Central before you add the 6 minutes of extra buffer, if you will. So an hour and 30 some odd minutes from where I am becomes outside the range of commutability for where I live, at least. And when I moved up here, it used to be an hour and 5 minutes. So these are more about aspirations as we start to come out of the pandemic, and not a criticism in any way, shape, or form. So could you just give us a sense of what kind of ridership we're looking at, whether that's something from Long Island Railroad and or Metro North, or whether you think about it separately, when we can imagine having a return to a slightly more available riding durations and frequency?
Sure. Thanks for the question, Neil. We've been monitoring, ridership very closely, on a train-by-train basis, every single day. And we're happy to see what you're seeing, which is, more and more people are riding. And, as I've indicated earlier, we've been especially gratified to see the ridership on the weekends, but even during the weekdays, ridership is definitely coming back. So we've been working very closely with headquarters in terms of planning a phased ramp up of the schedule to be able to accommodate the demand that we expect to see over the summer and then into the fall, as we expect more and more people to be coming back to work after Labor Day. And we will be back to the committee and to the entire board, shortly with respect to a specific schedule.
So sorry, you're going to come back to us before Labor Day with.
Yeah, oh yes, yes, before Labor Day.
That's good.
Yes,
Because I as well hear from many of my clients that Labor Day is the current switch back on model for more typical, no one's talking about it entirely going back to work in the same way, but Labor Day seems to be a trigger point. So I look forward to that this summer. Hopefully we'll have that meeting not during August. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I think that having a lot of riders come back is a good problem to have, and we want them all to have a good experience. So, we'll be back with our plans shortly.
Anybody else with questions for Kathy? All right, thank you. There being none, I'm going to take a short detour before asking Sarah to report on New York City Transit, then ask Tom Quigley to update us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, we had scheduled a vote on a procurement awarding new contracts for paratransit broker services to 4 contractors. One of the contractors that is currently providing those services was disqualified from bidding on the new contract. And recently, the incumbent contractor filed a lawsuit challenging its disqualification. This morning, during the board meeting, a New York State court granted the incumbent's emergency application for a temporary restraining order, preserving the status quo and enjoining the MTA from entering into the new contracts while the court considers the contractor's challenge, which is returnable before the court on June 14th. Accordingly, we're withdrawing the paratransit broker contracts from the board's consideration for this month. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Sarah, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Pat. So first of all, I just wanted to update on, it was a very tough morning for subway customers. And so I just want to update on what happened there, because I assume some of our board members may be familiar. I'm sure members of the public might be interested as well. So two separate incidents that happened within moments of each other really caused us significant issues this morning. At 8:13 a.m., an emotionally disturbed individual scaled the Manhattan Bridge, threatening harm to himself. Third rail power was removed on all tracks. This caused reroutes and extensive delays to the NQ, D, and B train service. The emergency services unit and hostage negotiators removed the individual from the bridge, but as you can imagine, we already had significant issues there. Then 4 minutes prior to that, so at the same time, at 8:09 a.m., an A train had the train's automatic air brakes activated. An investigation revealed a damaged current collector and resulting damage to the third rail protection board in the Cranberry tube. This caused delays and reroutes to A and C and F trains. Temporary repairs were made and permanent repairs will be made later this evening. And this incident remains under investigation. But the rerouted Ds that would normally travel through the Cranberry tube when the bridge had no power, since the tunnel was unavailable and affected as well, delays were compounded and stretched really throughout the entire B division. So very tough commute this morning for folks who are using the B division, and clearing up now, obviously, and things will be resolved tonight when we can make some permanent repairs, but quite a mess this morning, and we're obviously sorry that happened to folks who are trying to get in. Demetrius Critchlow, who's our acting EVP for subway operations, is in the Zoom if anybody has specific questions for him, but hopefully I've answered those questions for now, but I'll give people a second to ask any follow-up questions. Okay, I don't see anyone, although I can't see everyone, so.
Karen, everyone's safe, no injuries, right? Except for the person who was scaling the bridge?
Yeah, everyone, good question. Everyone's safe, and congratulations and my thanks to the subway team, to Sarah Meyer, who actually went to Fulton herself from the office, and to others who, moved customers and, worked with the fire department and with stations and with the subways team to make sure that everyone was taken care of. So luckily, the only issue was that people were extremely inconvenienced, but it happens. Any other questions? Okay, so let me move on to the rest of my remarks. Again, since I come at the end of the meeting, most of my comments have been covered by others, so I'll be really quick. First, just a couple comments on ridership. Continue to see us clicking away at ridership coming back. We're now regularly over 2 million riders a day on weekdays, which is great to see. Earlier this week hit another pandemic high or post-pandemic high of 2.33 million riders, which was great. And my thanks to Sarah Meyer and Abby Collins and their teams for the Take the Train, Take the Bus campaigns, which have been, I think, have helped bring people back. And as some folks mentioned, we had a great event last week in Astoria, working with local restaurant owners and the local community there as folks come back to the train and to transit. It's been just great to see. And of course, 24/7, the restart of 24/7 service helps with that. As ridership comes back, we've gotten some questions about, as we make progress on vaccinations and on the city coming back, what will happen with masks. I think everyone here knows this, but masks are still obviously required on transit. I think from everything I can tell from both our surveys and from anecdotal evidence, people seem to know that. I mean, we have not seen, I think people were concerned we might see some fall off of people wearing masks. We have not seen that at all. I think that's because people know that it remains the law of the land, and also just given the sort of PTSD that New York is still experiencing given the last year. People are still absolutely masked up. I can't, it's hard to even say the last time I saw more than just a one-off or a onesie or a twosie of someone not wearing a mask. I just feel like every commute, everyone is masked up. So appreciate everyone's continued compliance and cooperation there. We're having another mask force next week. And so anyone who is, actually, I think it's this week, anyone who is available, we would appreciate volunteering for Mask Force and participating with us. And this one is sponsored. So there's a new t-shirt and new swag. And I'm going to ask Sarah Meyer not to give you any swag unless you participate in Mask Force. So hopefully that inspires some participation. Others have talked about the vaccine pop-ups that we had in subway stations. I will confess that I was skeptical that we would get a lot of takers on this, but this is why you just try everything and throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. More than 11,000 people have taken us up on offers of vaccine, which is, I think, just a huge testament to what a good idea it was. And I felt like many of you, that there was so much vaccine out there that anyone who wanted a vaccine could get one. And I think this goes to show that if you bring the vaccine to people and literally just stop them in their tracks and offer it to them, particularly if you offer an incentive, they'll take it. And then I wanted to just go quickly back to crime and security and safety and security for a moment. Again, just my thanks to Chief McGran, of course, and to Pat Warren and to Chief O'Reilly for their cooperation and help. And again, Commissioner Shea for how responsive he's been. I think the numbers that were shared today were extremely helpful, and we're grateful for everyone's partnership. An update on our security contractors. I think everyone here knew that we had brought on about 100 security contractors in the height of the pandemic, when so many NYPD were out, so many MTA police were out, and we really needed additional eyes and ears in the system. We've now doubled that to 200 security contractors. Some of you may have seen a story in the Wall Street Journal about this earlier this week. Other systems are either doing or contemplating similar efforts. We know Atlanta and Philly and a couple other cities have been, and San Francisco have been trying to determine next steps in terms of facing some of the same challenges that we are. So certainly would like to get to a place where we have more creative solutions, but this is what's working for now. And on cameras, we continue to make great progress, and my thanks to the stations team and to the security team for their great efforts there. We are now installing somewhere between 8 and 15 camera sets each day. So we're hitting 1 to 2 stations most days. And so again, this is in furtherance of our goal of making sure that there are cameras in every station and on every platform. Again, this is a short-term solution. These are the what I would refer to as, the more affordable, expeditious cameras that we can install quickly and use to go back and look at if we have an incident in the system, so that we can share share footage and data with the NYPD. It's not a long-term solution. I leave that to my close work with Jano and the capital program on getting those longer lasting cameras up. But this is a really good solution in the meantime, and our teams have been great on moving on installing those very quickly. And finally, Chairman Foy talked about this a little bit. It was just such an honor on Monday to be able to unveil the mural of our colleague Garrett Goebel with his family at the Flatbush station. This was, hard to believe it's been 14 months since the fire on his 2 train at the 110th Street station. And I just can't tell you how grateful and touched his wife, Delilah, who's there on the left, and his mother, Vicky, who's there on the right, and his 2 sons. One of his sons is 2, so I'm not sure how much he's taking in, but his other son is 11 and absolutely took it all in. And so it was just a very touching thing to be able to do. And I'm very grateful to TWU and to Garrett's colleagues in RTO, and to all of the support that this project got internally, and particularly to Andrew Wilcox on my team, who sort of took this project from, just a couple of days even following Garrett's passing up through this week when it was completed. And the artist is BK Fox. She's obviously extremely talented. I'd never heard of her until this project. And I mean, the mural looks like a photograph of him. It's just unbelievably done. It literally, you can like see the twinkle in his eye. So I urge all of you, next time you're in the neighborhood, or detour around and go to Flatbush and see it. It's really beautiful. And the stations team literally rebuilt a subway wall so that the artist could paint on the subway wall, and it's then mounted on top of the existing subway wall, and then there's plexiglass on top of it, so that if it ever, God forbid, is the subject of vandalism, we can just remove the plexiglass and put it back up. So it's really beautifully done, and I'm really grateful to everyone who contributed. So thank you. And then finally, I want to, we have a retirement that I want to acknowledge. Rob Marino is retiring after unbelievably 40 years of public service. Many of you know Rob. He works in our government affairs department. He has a depth of knowledge that I can't even begin to explain across so many transit issues, and he's just always been extremely diligent. He's personally guided me through many thorny issues. We're going to miss him, and we're certainly very grateful for his service. So, so huge thank you to Rob Marino. And then finally, Tom or Pat, given the state of the procurement, do you want to have any conversation about it, or should we put that all off until the next meeting, and I'll move on to the other procurements?
Let's put it off. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. That makes sense. Okay, so let me just go to, let me just sort of edit on the fly here. So the New York City Transit, well, let me do this first. Let me take any questions, if there are any questions about my remarks before I go on to the procurements, if that makes sense.
Hey, Sarah, it's Kevin. I don't have a question for you, but for Tom Quigley. Hey, Tom, if we just filed a electronic notice of appeal, is the MTA entitled to a stay of that TRO and we could go forward with the procurement, or is it more complicated than that?
Yeah, you can't appeal a TRO like that. The actual motion is returnable in 2.5 weeks on June 14th, where we will actually put in more further submissions to the court on this. So I think we'll have a resolution fairly quickly, but that's an emergency appeal of a TRO is not doable.
Got it. Thanks. Sorry, Sarah.
No, that's okay. Any other questions?
Yes. Hi, Sarah. Thank you for the update. I appreciate it. Great to hear people are wearing masks. I know I see it all the time. Great on the vaccinations. I mean, 11,000 people are great. Going to miss Rob Marino. So Rob, if you're hearing, sorry to see you go. He really was a good force for the MTA. And as far as the procurement goes, if the TRO is reversed, we'll be voting on it next month, correct?
That is the hope. The motion is returnable, meaning fully submitted to the court on June 14th, but I don't know when the court will rule. The court did ask this morning when our next board meeting is, and we told the court June 23rd. So hopefully we'll have a ruling by the next board meeting, but if not, it may be another month.
And you did say it's status quo, so things will remain the same way that it is, correct?
Correct.
Okay, great. And then my last thing, Sarah, as we open up the city even more, I know people have been asking me about bathrooms being open. Do we have any thought on when that will happen?
Yeah, you know, it's come up a couple of times, and we'll take a look at it. You know, at the beginning of the pandemic, before we closed restrooms, we were seeing an uptick in employees feeling unsafe when they entered the restrooms, an increase in vandalism, and an increase in significant drug use. It doesn't mean that will be the case when we reopen bathrooms, but it means we should just be cognizant of it. And so we want to make sure that, you know, we're not putting any of our staff in a position where they could be walking into something that's not safe. But absolutely, I understand the need for it, and particularly with so few restrooms available to the public generally. But we'll take a close look at it and keep you posted on it.
Great, thank you so much.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, so let me move on to the other procurement action, which is an authorizing resolution requesting permission to utilize the RFP process for the design and install of a continuous welded rail in-feed deck for Department of Subways Division of Track I submit this procurement action for your approval.
Thank you, Sarah. I'll make a motion to approve it. Are there any questions? And if not, a second.
Second, Pat.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed or abstentions? The matter passes. Thank you, Sarah. Next, I'll turn to Jano for C&D procurement items from the New York City Transit Committee.
Okay. C&D has what is technically 8 procurement actions, really 1 action, but you follow it, totaling $40 million that are brought through the Transit and Bus Committee this month. C&D requests the board approve modifications to 8 state-funded indefinite quantity consultant contracts for architectural and engineering design services on miscellaneous MTA-funded projects to increase the total estimated aggregated value by $40 million and to extend the contract terms by 7 months. Here's the explanation. These contracts form a pool of 8 pre-qualified design teams through which task orders are issued, and we compete all of them to provide required architectural engineering services to support the capital program. The pool concept allows for competitive awards to be made on an expedited basis. So there's already been a competition on rates. We quickly compete what personnel and services they're able to offer to a particular design contract. This is how we get design done up to the level where you can bid it, whether it's design, build, or another delivery method. So funding authorization will be issued prior to the award for each task order. I submit these procurement actions to the board for approval.
I will make the motion to approve them. Do I have a second?
I second, Pat.
Any questions? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? The matter passes. Thanks, Jano. Now we're going to hear from Danny DiCrescenzo on bridges and tunnels. Danny, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, a feel-good story. I'm happy to report that there are 2 new peregrine falcon hatchlings at the Marine Parkway Bridge and 2 eggs at the Verrazano Narrows Bridge that we hope will hatch soon. The Marine Parkway Bridge tower structures mimic the natural cliff and canyon nest locations of peregrine falcons, making them ideal locations for breeding. Here are 2 female peregrine falcon chicks closely watched by their mother and a nesting shelter that Bridges and Tunnels built on the top of the Marine Parkway Bridge tower. I tried to bring them to the meeting today. They wouldn't let me. They told me to keep them on top of the tower. While this baby chick doesn't look too sure, she will soon be safely returned to her nest after being painlessly measured and banded for research purposes by EPA wildlife experts. By using our bridge towers to help these magnificent birds breed, Bridges and Tunnels continuing their recovery from endangered species status. You may have seen this story in the press lately, and as we have partnered with MTA Press Office to keep the public updated as our falcon families continue to grow. Thank you, IT, for popping in those pictures. Appreciate it. For our operations, bridges and tunnel levels continue their recovery in March and April. The B&T traffic levels continue their recovery in March and April. Since we are now more than a year past the COVID-19 pandemic initial impacts, current traffic performance is best evaluated by comparison with pre-pandemic levels 2 years ago. So in March 2021, paid vehicle traffic on bridge and tunnel facilities was 11% lower than in March of 2019. In April, traffic was 9% lower than 2 years ago, an indication that our regional economy is continuing to recover. And to note, May is so far trending in the same direction. And just this past Friday, Bridges and Tunnels hit a single-day traffic high since the start of the pandemic, with almost 966,000 vehicles crossing our facilities. On the COVID front, Bridges and Tunnels continues to make progress in its vaccination rate, with 53% of our employees who work at Bridges and Tunnels inoculated against COVID-19 so far. In an effort to get more of our staff vaccinated, we are currently conducting outreach sessions, providing employees with an open forum for discussing any vaccine concerns with Bridges and Tunnels safety and health personnel. These sessions have been well attended and will continue to be held at every bridge and tunnel facility. Before I introduce procurements, I would like to acknowledge the service of Brian Bajer, Chief Procurement Officer, who is retiring. Brian has been a key part of the Bridge and Tunnel team, leading procurement support of Bridge and Tunnel's capital program, Hurricane Sandy response, open road cashless tolling, and much more. Thank you, Brian, for your dedication, professionalism, and good humor. Thank you personally for the last couple of years for teaching me and getting me through the procurement processes. And you will be missed, and we wish you and your family a happy and healthy retirement. There are 3 competitive procurements this month totaling $393.8 million that will provide Bridges and Tunnels toll collecting services and support. There are no non-competitive items or ratifications. The first item is a competitively solicited procurement to Conduit State and Local Solutions in the amount of $246,086,235 for a period of 8 years to design, develop, implement, and maintain a new technological system to support tolling customer service center operations and to provide license plate and registered owner identification services to support tolling customer service center operations for the New York tolling authorities, which include MTA Bridges and Tunnels, the New York State Thruway Authority, the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, the New York State Bridge Authority, and Buffalo and Fort Erie Public Bridge Authority, and Thousand Island Bridge Authority. The other 2 procurements are competitively solicited personal service contracts. The first one is for Fanuel Incorporated for the operation of a customer contact center for New York tolling authorities in the amount of $121,890,384 with a contract duration of 5 years, and to Transcore LP for transponder distribution services for the New York tolling authorities in the amount of $25,828,079 with a contract duration of 5 years as well. Unless there are any questions, these procurements are described in detail in the staff summaries in this month's B&T committee book. And finally, I would just like to thank all who served this country this Memorial Day. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report.
Danny, thank you. Any questions on any of these 3 procurements? All right, good. I will make the motion to approve them. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed or abstentions? Procurements carry. Thank you, Danny.
Danny, one question. Are you considering renaming, in light of the blessed event, the bridge, the Peregrine Parkway Bridge?
Good idea.
Andrew, only if they're available to pay for naming rights.
Right.
Turning next to the Finance Committee, David Keller will take us through the finance materials. David.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to start with Budget Watch, which is actuals for expenses and revenues through the month of April and subsidies through the month of May. Farebox revenue was $343 million favorable year to date, or 85%. For the month of April, Farebox revenues were $78 million favorable, or 59%. Actuals of Farebox revenue are being measured against the adopted budget, which was based on McKinsey's worst-case scenario, which is used in the financial plan to minimize downside risk with the hope of better results. Through the first 4 months of the year, Farebox revenue has been close to the midpoint range, which is between the worst and best case scenarios McKinsey had put together for us. To keep this in perspective, however, it's important to note that the best case scenario through April remains below 50% of the pre-pandemic Farebox revenue level. We continue to watch financial results closely, and forecasts will be revised accordingly in the July plan. With regard to toll revenue was $246 million favorable year to date, or 71%. And for the month of April, toll revenue was favorable by $73 million, or 74%. The adopted budget for toll revenue is based on the midpoint McKinsey projection, and B&T toll revenue has consistently outpaced not only the midpoint, but has been outpacing the best case scenario as well for most months in 2021. When adjusted for the April 11th toll rate increase, April toll revenue is about 90% of pre-pandemic toll revenue levels, and year-to-date through April is about 87% of the pre-pandemic toll revenue level. As with Farebox revenue, revisions in toll revenue projections will be considered when we develop the July plan. Farebox and toll revenues are still significantly below the first 4 months of 2019, with Farebox revenue down $1.2 billion, or 62%, and toll revenue down $40 million, or 6%. With the stay-at-home orders having gone into effect in mid-March of 2020, the first quarter of 2019 is the more appropriate comparative period as opposed to the first quarter of 2020. Moving on to expenses. Expenses were $301 million favorable, or 6% year to date. Almost 70% of this favorable variance, however, is timing related, with the remainder attributable to vacancies, lower electric power and fuel consumption and rates, and lower paratransit service contract expenses due to trip usage. Adjusting for the timing related items, year-to-date expenses are about $96 million, or 2% favorable. Overtime, which is part of labor expenses, was $10 million unfavorable year-to-date, or 3%. New York City Transit was $24 million, or 14% unfavorable, primarily due to the weather events in the month of February, particularly snowfall, as well as vacancy and absentee coverage. All other agencies are favorable year-to-date April. Debt service was $24 million unfavorable year-to-date, or 2%, primarily due to debt service deposits being pre-funded ahead of when deposits were expected to be made in May. Adjusting for this pre-funding, debt services are about $25 million, or 4% favorable, reflecting the timing of debt issuance and lower than budgeted variable rates. Subsidies are through May as opposed to April, which we just heard for the revenues and the expenses. Subsidies were $323 million favorable year-to-date, or 19%, on the strength of the real estate transaction taxes, the payroll mobility tax, and MMTOA. The real estate taxes were $144 million favorable year-to-date, or 57%, with just over 80% of that favorable result from the mortgage recording tax, and mostly in the suburban counties. MMTOA was $77 million, or 16% favorable, reflecting an additional payment of $61 million in April from the prior state fiscal year that the MTA had initially recognized as a shortfall in the February financial plan. Moving on to the other dedicated taxes on a year-to-date basis, the payroll mobility tax was $144 million, or 32% favorable. The petroleum business tax was $10 million, or 4% unfavorable. MTA aid was $9 million, or 17% favorable, and the for-hire vehicle surcharge was $40 million, or 35% unfavorable. Additionally, the mansion tax was $24 million, or 31% favorable, while the Internet Marketplace sales tax was $15 million, or 11% favorable. Please note that the $39 million combined increase in these two taxes, along with the 2021 budget amounts, are now being recommitted to the 2020 to 2024 capital program, not the operating budget. As a result, the net effect of this action is a $219 million decrease in budgeted operating subsidies year to date. And that concludes Budget Watch, and I'll pause in case there are any questions before I move on.
Any questions for David?
I guess I'll just throw one out, which is I guess more like for Finance Watch than Budget Watch. But with a rise in inflation on the horizon and actually happening, probably before we'll see the numbers, how should we think about the impact, if at all, of inflation on the MTA?
Well, in general, our financial plan does include inflation, and if you keep in mind that inflation is generally measured by the Consumer Price Index, not the expenses that we as a company inherit as we purchase items. It's not necessarily a one-for-one comparison. Our financial plans do incorporate different increases and decreases, quite frankly, for rates, whether it be electric power, fuel, different materials. So they're built into there. The forecasts that we obtain for the most part are from an outside service, IHS Inc., which used to be known as Global Insight. Our electric costs are based upon future prices that we receive from the Chicago Mercantile Exchange and the Commodities Board of Trade. And we will be updating those in the July financial plan as well. Okay, great. Thank you. And because you mentioned Finance Watch, if there are no other questions, the next item on the Finance Committee part of the agenda is Finance Watch, and Patrick McCoy is here to answer any questions you guys might have.
Thanks, David. I would just point out for the board, Finance Watch is in the exhibit book for the Finance Committee this month, and there is a written summary in there of our inaugural TBTA PMT issuance, which closed successfully on May 5th. And I would just let the board know that we are also preparing the inaugural issuance of TBTA third lien notes to finance the initial infrastructure investments for CBDT. And that preliminary offering memorandum will be out later this week, and we'll price those notes next week. And happy to take any questions if there are any.
All right, good. David, back to you.
Thank you. There's one action item for finance. The item is the 2020 Annual Investment Report Staff Summary, and you can find it on page 28. The report is also in the exhibit book and on MTA Info, and Josie Ancodio is available to answer any questions you may have.
All right, if there are no questions, I'll make a motion to approve. I'll make a motion to approve. Can I have a second? Commissioner Miholtis, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed or abstains? Thank you. David.
Thank you. There are 6 reports and information items. The first is the station maintenance billing on page 30, and Noemi Lopez is available to answer any questions. This is the annual station maintenance billing report. Okay, thank you. The second item is the annual pension presentation. It's available in the exhibit book and on mta.info. Valerie Bannon and Margaret Connor are available to answer any questions. Moving along, the draft MTA consolidated financial statements are next and are also available in the exhibit book and on MTA Info, and Noemi Lopez is available for any questions. And lastly, we have the Metro North, Long Island Railroad, and New York City Transit Federation reports on pages 37. Well, it says 37 to 25, so that's obviously wrong. Agency representatives are available if there are any questions. Thank you. The next item, Mr. Chairman, is the First Mutual Transportation Insurance Committee's annual meeting. The staff summary appears on page 57 and in the exhibit book and on MTA Info, and Phyllis Rockmuth is available to take questions.
Any questions on this? And David, no vote is required on this, right?
I believe that is correct. Yes, Mr. Chairman.
All right, good. Thank you, David. Now I'll turn to David Florio with real estate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Real estate has 2 action items for consideration and approval. For Metro North Railroad, we have a license agreement with Oliver Engineering for retail space on North Main Street in Portchester. And for the MTA, we have an amendment of the license with Outfront Media for advertising throughout the MTA system. There's one additional information item, and we're happy to answer any questions regarding any of the foregoing.
Thank you, David. Any questions for David on these matters? I'll make a motion to approve the real estate items. Can I have a second, please? Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed or abstentions? The real estate item carries. Before we move on to Audit Committee, David Jones had a technical issue earlier in the meeting. David has joined us, and David. Commissioner Jones? All right, why don't we move on to audit? Michelle Woods is going to address the Audit Committee items. Michelle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have one item for the Audit Committee members that requires a vote. The MTA public accounting firm Deloitte has completed their audit of the 2020 financial statements. Deloitte has provided a memo detailing the results of the conclusions of their examination and will provide it to the Audit Committee this Friday. Jill Strohmeyer from Deloitte is on the line to answer any questions. In addition, MTA management has reviewed the MTA's consolidated financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2020. They have indicated that the financial statements are complete, accurate, and prepared in conformity with generally accepted accounting principles using the latest GASB accounting pronouncements. Noemi Lopez, the Deputy Chief Controller for MTA HQ, is available to answer any questions.
Thanks, Michelle. Any questions for Deloitte or the agency controllers for the year-end financial statements? Okay. Do I have a motion from a member of the Audit Committee to accept the audited financial statements?
I make a motion to accept.
Thank you, Commissioner. Do I have a second?
Second. Yes, you do. David Jones.
Thank you, Commissioner. This vote's for members of the Audit Committee only. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The 2020 year-end financial statements are accepted. Michelle, back to you.
The remaining 3 items on the agenda do not require a vote. The general counsels from each agency, along with representatives from the independent accounting firm, have reviewed the status of major litigation that may have a material effect on the financial positions of their agency, or for which a contingent liability has been or will be established and are disclosed in a footnote to the financial statements. In addition, the committee was briefed on the status of the third-party lawsuits for which there have been minimal or sporadic case activity. All current information has been reflected in the financial statements. The MTA Chief Information Security Officer reported to the committee members on activities of the MTA IT for the past year, including its accomplishments, strategies, and plans for the current year. A copy of their presentation is included in the board book, and Ralph Portnoy, the Chief Information Security Officer, is available to answer any questions. The Chief Compliance Officer and compliance staff presented a report on past due remediation plans and remediation plan implementation progress to the Audit Committee. All internal findings and their corresponding remediation plans are tracked in the RSA Archer Governance, Risk, and Control System. This allows the compliance staff to enter remediation actions and monitor the status of those actions to identify findings that have not been addressed timely. A copy of this report is included in the board book, and the Monkiers, the Chief Compliance Officer, is available to answer any questions. This concludes the May work plan for the Audit Committee.
Thank you. Any questions for Michelle or Lamont Curse? Okay, good. Michelle, thank you for the update. I'm now going to ask Michael Gardner to address Diversity Committee items. Michael. Commissioner Jones, while Michael Gardner is approaching the desk, do you want to?
I'll be very.
Yeah, you had a comment and you had a technical issue earlier.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's I sound like a broken record on this. When Mr. Schwartz was talking about the briefings that the board members were having for committees, I was raising the question again why these briefings should not be subject to the open meetings law and allow the public to participate. I think it's timely now, after 14 months, that we should consider something like this. So it doesn't have to be answered, but I'm still concerned that we seem to be dragging on now into our 14th month without public disclosure that I think is required. Thank you.
So, Commissioner, I'm going to respond briefly. Anyway, the briefings that we held last week were briefings. And I'll note, as you all remember, we had board briefings when we had in-person committee meetings on a separate day. The board briefings are not required to be publicly available, and obviously there are times where sensitive and confidential events are discussed related to litigation, for instance, as one example. Secondly, I would say that I'm hoping that in the very short term, we're going to be able to return to in-person meetings, including in-person committee meetings. We'll take guidance from, obviously, the State Department of Health and other authorities, but I think it's important to point out that these are two separate issues, and your concern is noted.
And if I may, with respect to the first issue, the open meeting law defines a meeting for purposes of that statute as an official convening of a public body for the purpose of conducting public business. And as I said earlier, it is not an official convening, and they don't conduct public business. It's an informational session.
As it was when we held separate in-person committee meetings. Michael Gardner, over to you.
Thank you, Chairman Foy. Let me just say that the state of the MTA's MWDB program is strong. I want to talk about the historic Small Business Mentoring Program first. We are on the verge of awarding our $500 million contract. We're going to exceed $500 million in contract awards from the inception of this program. There were those who said that this program would never work in a civil construction organization. They were wrong. The governor has, as we all know, has extended this program for the next 10 years as a New York State law. So for the first time in history, smaller contractors are now have the opportunity to work for North America's largest transportation network, the MTA. And so that's going to be a great milestone. In working with my great friend Steve Apachaki, we agreed years ago to work together, and we have drove some great results. For example, it was Steve who indicated that we should look at smaller construction projects from $3 million to $24.9 million and actively go out and recruit minority women-owned firms so they can bid to us as prime contractors. We have had great hits. And so the mentor program is doing exactly what it was created to in fact do. Build a more robust pool of minority, women-owned, and disadvantaged businesses who can be developed and then recruited to bid on larger projects so we can create jobs in those communities that have historically been shut out. And so in addition to that, working with Steve, we went to Albany and we got the highest level of discretionary program in the state. So out of 97 state agencies and authorities, we have a $1 million discretionary threshold. And let me say what we have in fact been doing with that. In the area of information technology, there's been $135.6 million in assignments and awards in the IT sector. And so now the smaller IT firms do not have to work simply as sub-consultants to IBM and the other big companies. They can work here as prime consultants for the MTA. Also, we are looking at the mentor program as this board indicated 3 years ago that they wanted to see more diversity in the mentor program. And so once again, I'm working with Steve to make sure that the bid lists that we are compiling are going to maximize a diversity in those bid lists. Let me talk about some of our results as far as business and business outreach. We have reached out to 709 firms in our outreach efforts, and it's been hampered because most things now are done virtually, but we have not missed a step. And so since January of this year, we have reached out and touched 709 firms to try to encourage them to get certified. Of those firms who did get certified, there were 50 firms who were in fact certified, and they were recipients of $4.4 million in contract awards. The DBE certification results. There have been 441 new DBE certification applications received. Out of that, since 2017, out of that number, there's been 287 firms that have been certified here at the MTA. Workforce, EEO numbers. We currently have 69,911 employees, of which 12,575 or 18% are females, 49,107 or 70% are ethnic minorities, and 2,000 or 3% are veterans. The small business mentoring program, I just mentioned that we are on the cusp of awarding our $500 million contract, and that will be awarded probably sometime in the months of June or July. In the area of our MWDB contract compliance, in the first half of this year, from October until March 21, DBEs, there have been $49 million or 14% of DBE awards. During that same time period, there's been 19% or $135 million that were paid to DBEs. With respect to our state-funded projects, since April of 2020 through March 2021, there's been $240 million awarded to New York State certified M&WBE firms, which equate to 17%. With respect to those dollars paid, there's been $909 million or 31% that's been paid on our state-funded projects. With respect to SDVOBs, there's been $29 million awarded or 24%. and there's been $36 million or 4% paid to those same firms. When we talk about our capital projects, during the first half of our FTA-funded projects from October 2020 to March 2021, there's been $19 million paid, or 23% DBE inclusion, and those DBE firms were paid $61 million, or 21% in payments. During the same time period on our state-funded projects, on capital projects, there's been $19 million, or 13% awarded, and there's been $122 million, or 14% paid to MNWBEs. With respect to SDVOBs, there's been $900,000, or 2% awarded, and $12 million, or 2% paid. Legal fees, we had a year in which 17% of our legal fees were paid to New York State certified MNWB law firms, which equated to $10 million. I had a conversation with our counsel, and we agreed to meet once every quarter to ensure that there's going to be a maximization of our certified minority women-owned law firms who are being paid and hired. Let me say on the investment banking side, there's been $3.6 million paid, or 24% MWBE, to New York State certified investment bankers, and an additional $854,000, or 6% paid to SDVOB firms. Asset fund management, we currently have $1.74 billion, or 21%, that's currently being managed by New York State certified MNWBE firms. Let me say, and I'll end by saying this, that when this board supports and the chairman supports this program, as the Governor Cuomo is supporting this program, great things happen. We have the ability to award our taxpayer-driven contracts not only in a cost-effective manner because it's taxpayers' dollars being paid, but in an inclusive manner, and inclusive of our MW and DBE population. Also, a special shout out to Rhonda Herman, who has been supportive of this program, and Larry Swartz, who reminded us of what the governor's expectations are when it comes to his MNWBE program. Thank you.
Michael, great results, great report. Any questions for Michael? All right, good. I will then take a motion to adjourn the meeting. I'll make it. Do I have a second? All in favor? The meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody. Okay, common theme of today's board meeting is increased ridership across the system. Subways, buses, Metro North, Long Island Railroad, and that includes increased ridership on weekends, and the same phenomenon with respect to bridges and tunnels. And with that, happy to take questions.
And first up today from the New York Post is David Meyer. David, good afternoon.
Thank you, Tim, and thanks, Pat, for taking my question. Pat, my question is about these informational briefings that the MTA has been holding. Is the MTA attempting to circumvent the open meetings law by not taking attendance at these meetings? And does it concern you that your own finance committee chair thought that the meetings were actual committee meetings and can't tell the difference, apparently, between an informational briefing and a committee meeting?
No, I think it was misspeaking. It happens to me all the time. No, it's what we're doing with respect to the briefings is exactly the same thing we did when we had in-person committee meetings on the Monday before the board meeting. There's no action taken. There's no motions put before the board. It's an informational briefing for a number of reasons, including the fact that things like litigation are commonly discussed, and that can't be done for obvious reasons in a public setting. So, David, it's completely consistent with the law and with our prior practice.
But if the previous meetings that were held on Mondays were held in public, aren't you doing the public a disservice if not violating the law by holding?
No, sorry, then I haven't been clear. There are two sets of meetings we're talking about. The first is the in-person committee meetings that occurred usually the Monday before the board briefing. Those meetings are now included within the Wednesday, the board meeting that you all just saw. It has been our practice to have board briefings whether or not we do in-person committee meetings. When we did in-person committee meetings on Monday, there would be a board briefing before that as a matter of common practice. So that is completely consistent, A, with New York state law, and B, with the MTA's prior practice, and frankly, the practice of, certainly when I was at the Port Authority, board briefings were done as well, and I think many agencies do it, and it's consistent with law, and matters like litigation, for instance, can't be discussed, shouldn't be discussed, privilege and other things could be violated. So completely consistent with the law, completely consistent with prior practice.
All right, we move on now to NJ Burkett, WABC TV Eyewitness News. NJ.
Prior practice, and frankly, the practice of, certainly when I was at the Port Authority, board briefings were done.
NJ, you're up if you have a question.
I hear Pat speaking, though.
And
That's because you're on delay, just like in the TV world. You need to turn down the monitor and ask your question.
Could be violated. So completely consistent with the law, completely consistent.
All right, we're going to come back to you. Let's go to Danielle Moyo of Politico, who has her monitor turned down and her hand up. Danielle, you're up.
TV Eyewitness News.
Hi, thank you. I have two quick questions, same topic. I just wanted to check in on where the MTA is on its hiring of 500 MTA police officers. Is that still in a freeze?
No, we've been hiring police officers for some time. We've got a class that will start either in June or July. We are well on our way to hiring the 500. I think the number is approximately 400. The new class will be over 100, as I understand it. 135? Danielle, 135.
Gotcha. Okay,
Yeah, and the latest information's in the board book, by the way.
Oh, okay. I apologize for that.
Not a problem.
And then the other thing was just something, you mentioned how earlier in the meeting, some areas of crime have risen despite low ridership. But at the same time, you know, you've kind of noted, like at the previous ABNY forum, the kind of role social presence plays in, you know, crime patterns. So I guess I'm just hoping you can clarify on like why you present that as a paradox. I look at it as it seems like it would make sense that some areas of crime would increase in the pandemic with low ridership.
Well, look, I don't know whether it makes sense is the way to characterize it. It's unacceptable. The area, for instance, of felony assaults, which is a serious crime, is up significantly. You know, for the week, for the month, for the you know, frankly, the last number of months. Grand larcenies are down because there hasn't been a new iPhone version that has come out, but felony assaults are serious. Obviously, transit workers have reported over 1,000 assaults, attacks, intimidation, and spitting incidents over the last 6 months. Our customers, feel it. 75% of them tell us that crime and harassment on the subways is the most significant issue, far and away greater concern to our riders than COVID-19 at this point. And obviously, transit workers feel exactly the same way. On a ridership adjusted basis, the felony assaults are up on an even greater basis. And people on streets, city streets, public plazas, and subways, more people create some degree of social control that doesn't exist when wide open spaces, as exist in any urban center, are mostly empty.
And the next question is from Erica Byfield of WNBC. Erica.
Hi there. So quick question about the survey that you guys put out that looked at the number of NYPD officers who were in stations. Give us some background on why you did it this way, and then your response to their response today as to, what they thought about it.
Do you want to speak to the survey?
Erica, do you want to share what the response was that you're asking us to comment on?
Yes, they said that they had wished that you would have seen more officers out there when you were out there, but they kind of insinuated that the officers are out there even though you didn't see them.
I think I followed that. Sorry, you're referring to this quote, the survey that our employees did?
Yes.
Traffic checkers, yeah. So first of all, not an official survey. What we asked folks to do is these are our traffic checkers who are in the system day in and day out. They're the folks who do things like look at numbers of mask compliance. They're the ones who post signage when we're, have a GO, things like that. So what we asked them to do was to just let us know when they were encountering police in the system. So not scientific, but I think helps us to just understand, how where the police are and how often they're being seen. I mean, look, anecdotally, we're having conversations all the time internally about what we're seeing on our own commutes, what we're seeing when we're in the system. We're all, talking to each other and talking to our friends and family about what they're seeing in the system. And we just wanted another piece of information. I think Chief O'Reilly's comments today that she's willing to share a lot more information with us is extremely welcome news. And we're looking forward to that meeting and having those conversations, which I think will go a long way towards giving us more information about how many police are in the system and where they are, and not just where in the system, but are they on platforms, in stations, on trains, whatever. So I think that'll be very helpful.
Were you surprised by what the checkers saw?
I mean, I wasn't particularly surprised. I mean, certainly, I am always looking at what's happening on my own commute, but generally, even though I try to change it up a little bit, I'm generally using the same several stations. I'm certainly out and about in the system a lot, and so I'm always looking around when I'm, out in the far, going to the far reaches of the system. Many people here, use the system day in and day out, and we were all sort of seeing the same thing, not seeing a whole lot of uniformed police activity, but obviously thinking, well, we're not seeing folks on trains, we're not seeing folks on platforms, maybe they're, upstairs in the station. And so I wasn't particularly surprised because it basically mirrored what we were seeing. But again, obviously delighted to hear from Chief O'Reilly today that she's going to share more information, and her acknowledgement today that it's really important for people to see the presence and feel it. I mean, she said she hears us on that, and I take her up on it, so it'll be helpful.
All right, the next question is from Steve Burns. CBS 880 Radio has been patiently waiting in the courtyard, trying to make sure he gets a question in before the storm arrives. Steve, you're up.
Yeah, hopefully before the hail gets here and washes away all the pollen in my backyard. I wanted to see if we could hit the reset button here on the policing and crime discussion, because it seemed like it kind of devolved a little bit today. What is the current request from City Hall? I know, Chairman, you said you wanted to have more help from City Hall. Specifically, what still are you looking for? It seemed like there was that kind of kumbaya moment where we were happy that there's more data being shared. Is that it, or do you still want more resources?
Yeah, look, I think real progress was made on the board. I think Chief O'Reilly's suggestion that there be staff meetings apart from the board meeting is common sense and a productive suggestion. I think the sharing of data today was important for us and frankly for the public and our customers. We are constantly monitoring, as is the NYPD, the situation in the subways, and working together. I think this issue will make further progress on it.
And further on Commissioner Schwartz's suggestion about getting a Ray Kelly or Bill Bratton type to look at this, how receptive are you to that suggestion?
Look, I think that's something that ought to be considered for sure.
And we move on back, really, to N.J. Burkett of Eyewitness News. Has his audio circumstances sorted. N.J.
I apologize to you, Tim, and to everyone on the call. To Sarah Feinberg directly, and I think I would just like her to elaborate a bit on her answer to Erica's question, which was really good. To what extent are you, Sarah, satisfied with what you heard today? Did you need to hear more? Do you need to know more at this point?
Well, again, I was really pleased with what I heard today. I mean, these are the things that I heard from Chief O'Reilly today. One, that she hears us, has heard our concerns, and has heard the concerns of our customers and of our workforce. Two, that, despite sort of my alarm at the early numbers she was talking about, she said really clearly that, there are every day more than 2,600 uniformed officers surged into the system. She, confirmed that of the original 644 that were surged in, 500 full-time officers remain. And on top of those 500 full-time officers, or minimum 500, at least 500 full-time officers, another 250 are on trains in the morning and another 250 are on trains in the evening. That's really helpful information and good news, I think, for our customers and for our workforce that has been, desperate for that kind of surge in activity. We also heard that her folks are checking in with our conductors and our station agents and our workforce. That's really helpful. She acknowledged that we have been installing cameras as quickly as we can, and that's been helpful to her and helpful to her team. And so, look, I think I felt like we moved in a really positive direction today. And I feel like she has heard us and acknowledged that, a presence is really important to our customers, that they weren't seeing it and that they're going to start seeing it going forward. So I'm looking forward to sort of seeing what that impact is.
And it was interesting that you pointed out that the data sharing was not a two-way street, and she's resolved essentially to keep you guys posted on what they're doing, which is, I think, really important.
That's huge. So we, our approach is share all the information you possibly can with your partners. So we share, camera information. This is where we're thinking about installing, do you have views on where on the platform you'd like for these to be installed? Here are security contractors. Here's where we're thinking about putting them. What are your thoughts on deployment and hotspots? Same with our MTA policing, same with all the coordination of policing that goes on underground. We don't get a lot of information in return. I think that I don't blame any specific individual for that. I think that's long been the case. My case that I make back to them is I'm responsible for the safety and security of everyone in this system, and I'm responsible for running the system. You're responsible for policing the system. Can I not get some information about how you're policing a system that I'm responsible for? And, I think what she said today was, that's a really good point. We're going to start sharing more information with you. That is, I think, huge, in my opinion, and I'm looking forward to the meeting and getting that information. I think will be hugely helpful to us.
All right, thanks, NJ. Hey, was that Steve Jacobowitz back there making his first appearance at an MTA news conference, a cameo? Look at that. Longest-serving employee at Disney ABC, unbelievable. We move on to Michelle Caskey at Bloomberg. Good afternoon, Michelle.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for this presser. So just to follow up on that, when the number of the every day more than 2,600 officers are on the subway system, and this question is for Pat or for Sarah, either one. Is that enough? I mean, given some of the incidents that have happened, do the subways even need even more policing, even more, a larger number than that?
Look, Michelle, as Sarah just said, the confirmation of that degree of staffing, knowing that fact is in and of itself important. I think, secondly, the meetings that the chief agreed to, I think, are also important, and hopefully that will become a regular, long-standing, practice put in place. As Sarah just said, she's responsible for running the subway system, and having a greater hand on the facts of policing, what the plan is, et cetera, is going to be important both to the NYPD, the MTA police, and the MTA, and in this case, New York City Transit.
But those are the numbers, but at the same time, you guys are saying, look, when we look into this, when we do a survey, when we do a report, we're not seeing the police where we need to see them. And there's been, media reports on this as well.
No, of course, and I think that Chief O'Reilly's statement today, that she takes that to heart, and that a active, visible police presence deters crime. Makes riders and employees more comfortable in the system, more secure. And obviously, most importantly, thirdly, we've got an obligation to provide a safe and secure environment. More police more uniformed resources together with mental health resources will be a huge step down the road towards that goal.
And next up is Paul Berger of the Wall Street Journal. Paul.
Thank you. Hi, Pat.
Hello, Paul.
I was wondering if you could comment on the tolling contracts that were approved today by either you or one of your colleagues. Like, what was the thinking behind splitting the contracts up into separate parts? And also, second part of the question is, Conduent didn't get the customer service part of the contract. Is that a reflection on the MTA's dissatisfaction with the way customer service has worked for Easy Pass and tolls by mail in recent years?
So a couple of things. One is this was a procurement done in collaboration with the Port Authority and the New York State Thruway. The unanimous view was that breaking up the work was important. We actually had a third-party independent consultant weigh in on that. The selections were made by an evaluation committee of representatives from the Port, MTA, and New York State Thruway. We believe we've picked the right horse for each course in this case. And importantly, there will be an increase in the number of customer service representatives, and we believe that will provide significantly better customer service for our customers.
And we move on to Streets Blog's own Dave Colon. He's, about 6 hours from tip-off. He's got the jersey. He's still melancholy from, over the weekend, but he's got a question nevertheless. Dave.
Yeah, look, you got to keep the faith. So I think that they still take tonight's game in the series. I had a couple of questions. One is there are legislators in Albany today already. There are candidates running for city council who have said that they're in favor of free transit. The MTA, of course, you guys ran free buses during the early days of the pandemic. So I'm just curious if the MTA has done any kind of analysis on the brief experiment there, and if not, why? And then I have a second question.
David, just to be clear, the question is, has the MTA done analysis of a free fare program?
Well, yeah, since it ran one, I know it was an emergency basis and everything, but it hasn't looked at anything from that.
Here's our reality. We get approximately half our revenue from our customers. About $6 billion of that is fare revenue, subways, buses, Metro North, and Long Island Railroad. There's no reasonable or prudent replacement for that revenue. I don't see the city of New York, I don't see the state of New York, I don't see the federal government replacing that. We are more reliant on fare revenue, certainly in absolute terms, but we're also more reliant on fare revenue from a percentage of revenue point of view, and replacing the not imposing fares and collecting them would create a multi-billion-dollar gap in the MTA's finances and revenues. Unless the legislators are going to come with a reliable, sustainable, growing source of revenue in the $6 billion category, range, it is hard to understand how that could possibly work in the real world.
Okay. And then I know today there was a brief talk about pen access, and it's been in the news a little bit. Very exciting, especially for everyone in the Bronx. But I was wondering, we're expanding that commuter rail line. What, if anything, can you tell me about the MTA's efforts to make commuter rail work better into something that works better for people that are in the city outside of Manhattan, and even possibly something that becomes part of like a larger through running all the way through Manhattan, regional system that can connect Long Island, New Jersey, and Connecticut with public transportation?
Well, look, I think there's clearly more, and we're looking at this in a serious way. There's clearly more that the Long Island Railroad can do with respect to its existing stops in Brooklyn and Queens, and the same with respect to Metro North in the Bronx. Ridership on some of those city stops is actually increased at a rate greater than, for instance, some of the suburban stops. And I think that Penn Station access is important for many reasons, but also vitally important from a social equity point of view. And I think that both railroads can do more on those issues in terms of Brooklyn and Queens with respect to Long Island and the Bronx with respect to Metro North with respect to serving those customers. And more to come on that subject.
And more to come now from Steve Nesson, who joins us from Gothamist and WNYC. Steve.
Hey, Pat. Thanks for taking the time.
Hi, Steve.
Hey, my question is about not NYPD, or sorry, not about MTA police hiring, but about hiring subway and bus workers. Can you talk a little bit about the current staffing levels? I know there have been delays on trains because there weren't enough workers. Can you describe the current condition and what are you doing to, hire more workers? What kind of efforts are underway for that?
So, Craig, do you want to start with buses on this question?
Sure. Well, thanks to the federal bailout, we have begun a hiring plan. We're currently at a 3% vacancy rate, and we're still operating about 95% of schedules that are designed for over 2 million customers. And we're only carrying about 50% of those. So that's where we're at. Our customer metrics, though, still stay strong as compared to pre-COVID levels.
Yeah, and just on the subway side, look, I mean, I think there's no secret here. The reality is we were in a hiring freeze for pieces of the pandemic. We've been out of it now for months. We continue to hire all the time, train operators, bus operators, as Craig just said, and dispatch conductors, everything else across the board. And it's just going to take us a while to dig out. But I believe that we'll get there, and we're hiring as many people as we can at a pace that makes sense.
Can you be any more specific about the numbers of subway workers?
I don't have them in front of me. We can follow up with you.
And next up is Ben Kabak of 2nd Avenue Sagas. Ben, good afternoon.
Thanks, Tim. Good afternoon. Two questions probably for Jano. The first is the R211s. I think the test units were supposed to have been delivered last month. Were those delivered on time? And if not, do you have a timeline and cause for delays?
So Ben, Jano's not with us, and we'll come back.
Okay.
We'll come back to you on that question.
Sure, thanks. And then the next one, this may also be one to come back to. I noticed that he had an update on 68th Street, Hunter College, which is a story I've been following now since October of 2011, and it sounded like there would be some movement. Is there light at the end of this tunnel with those apartment buildings and the resistance to the elevator on 69th Street and something more concrete than just...
Yeah, I think for the latest on that, the press shop will come back to you. It has been quite a saga, obviously.
All right, let's go east. Alfonso Castillo is standing by at Newsday. Alfonso.
Hello. Hi, Pat. Thanks for doing this, as always. So I know a lot of the discussion has been about homelessness on the subways and crime on the subways. I've heard from a lot of Long Island Railroad commuters raising concerns about the conditions at Penn Station. They talk about how there's been a noticeable uptick in homelessness at Penn Station, panhandlers, certainly on the west side of the station. You yourself are a commuter every day to Penn Station. Is it something you've noticed? And if it's a problem, how do you address it? In as much as typically this is not a jurisdictional issue for the NYPD. This is MTA police, Amtrak police, and the railroad's own homeless outreach contractors. So is this a problem, and what can be done about it?
Yeah, look, homelessness and emotionally disturbed people is an issue throughout the city on city streets and in subways. You're right. I commute through Penn Station every day. Did this morning. I believe that the situation at Penn Station is better than it was 60 or 90 days ago. I frequently going through, will text the police leadership in terms of the condition. I think over the last 60 days, it's better. I'm not telling you it's perfect, but the MTA police has been more focused on issues at Penn Station. Obviously, Penn Station's a complex place with Amtrak New Jersey Transit and Long Island Railroad cohabitating, and with obviously significant subway ridership. But it's going to remain a challenge and something that we're going to have to remain, each of the agencies is going to have to remain focused on.
If I have a second question here, I'm told that the governor at his press briefing earlier today talked about touring East Side Access tomorrow. Can you talk a bit about setting that up? Is that his request? Is that something that the MTA requested? And is that going to be open to the public?
So, Alfonso, as you'll probably appreciate, I will leave the I'll leave that to the governor's press office, and I direct those questions to them. Obviously, East Side Access is one of the largest infrastructure projects, in the nation, bar none, and an incredibly important one for, frankly, the entire MTA, but the Long Island Railroad initially in particular.
All right, let's go to Logan Crawford of News 12 Long Island. Stay out on the island. Pat, pay no attention to the name on your screen. We're reliably informed it is Logan Crawford, the reporter from News 12.
Hi, thanks so much. And maybe Phil Eng can answer this question, but can we just get a response to the Citizens Budget Commission report talking about laying off half of the LIRR conductors and implementing the proof of payment system?
Well, look, let me take that one. First, the Citizens Budget Commission is an important group, and their reports are usually substantive and the result of serious analysis. We are looking at the latest report. Some of the things they suggest can easily be implemented. Others are more difficult because they require changes in law, regulation, collective bargaining agreements, plural. And we'll be looking at looking at the latest CBC report to see what is actionable in the practical world we live in.
All right, as we cruise down the stretch, we've got Clayton Gusa of the New York Daily News is joining us. Clayton.
Hey, Pat.
Hi, Clayton.
I have two questions. The first one is on detailing procurement put out recently related to East Side Access. It says that the MTA intends to create a new subsidiary agency that will be responsible for oversight and contract management of the project and service. Could you help explain to me and my readers what that means and why you need to do that? I mean, you were brought in 2 years ago with the task of streamlining and reorganizing the MTA, and this just seems like it's something that further complicates the bureaucracy there. So if you can answer that, and then I have one more on another topic.
Yeah, so Clayton, the reason we're pursuing this is it gives the MTA and its agencies additional flexibility. May result, no decisions have been made, and obviously this has not been taken to the board. Public Authorities Accountability Act requires a creation of a subsidiary by an agency like the MTA be approved by the board. But if we were to pursue it, it would be because it would be a cost-effective measure that would provide options that wouldn't be available without the existence of a subsidiary. And we'll be discussing the matter, I expect, in the next board meeting or so.
Before I get to my next question, could you just tease out a few details of what options that would provide?
Yeah, I think what I'll do is I'll wait till we discuss it in with the board and the public in the future.
Okay.
All right, Clayton, question number 3. Let's do it.
Very good. And then I wanted to ask about the accessoride paratransit broker contract. I mean, this is the second time you guys have put that out for bid. Obviously, there was an MWBE that was not selected last time that you guys said that you didn't know was an MWBE, so you put it out to bid again. And then there's obviously an ethical concern. So there's two parts here. What does it say about the MTA's procurement process when you publish the rates, the winning bid rates, and then put a project like of this scope out for bid again? It seems to undermine the sanctity of what's supposed to be a closed bidding process. And I know there's other issues here, but specifically when it comes to rebidding this. And two, I know there's this CURB was issued a TRO this morning, but is there have you communicated anything to curbs customers in paratransit, specifically those on the on-demand pilot, because it's widely popular. And the riders who use it overwhelmingly tell me that they love the service. So have you communicated to those riders that they are no longer going to be able to use curb? And two, could you speak to the procurement fiasco altogether?
Yeah, look, I think the lessons from this is when the integrity of a procurement is called into question, we're going to take the appropriate steps. And the appropriate steps was the MTA referred the matter to the independent Inspector General. The Office of the Inspector General did its review, issued a report. The report called for a responsibility hearing. The responsibility hearing was held. A decision was made, I believe the right one, to disqualify the vendor in question. Publishing the rates when the procurement is over is A, standard practice, B, it's good practice from an integrity and transparency point of view, and thirdly, I believe that we will end up with a satisfactory, perhaps superior financial result for the MTA and robust service for our customers.
And taking us home today is Jose Martinez of the city, who famously watches these news conferences even when he's on vacation, but he's working today. Jose.
Hi, Tim. Hi, Pat. That's pathetic of me. Sarah mentioned that mask compliance in the subway has remained very high in spite of the changing standards outside of the subway system and guidance for when and where to mask up. Do you have any numbers available or any sense of how much the MTA has issued in terms of penalties, fines for people who have not worn masks in the transit system? Thank you.
Yeah, Jose, I don't have that at my fingertips. We'll come back to you on it. I'd say a couple of things. My anecdotal experience is the same as Sarah's, which is almost everybody on the Long Island Railroad and almost everybody I see, taking the 3 or the 2 and the 1, and then reversing that in the evening is wearing a mask. To the CDC, U.S. Department of Transportation, and New York State Department of Health continue to require mask wearing on public transit, and New Yorkers have responded to that, and we'll come back to you with the factual question.
Thank you.
And Jose, for the record, out of about 49,000 contacts between staff, police, and customers, there have been 37 summonses issued since September of 2020 when the program started. So 37 summonses, 49,000 contacts. With that, everybody, thanks so much. Great to see all of you.